But I think that we need to be equipped to the point that we are at least what Peter said. He said, be ready to give an answer. Not get ready, but be ready. All right, it is your friendly favorite neighborhood apologist, Damon Richardson, for another edition of Urban Logia Live. Thank you so much for your patience. We are coming in tonight. I think many people have been snowed in, and some people have just kind of out of abundance of concern for safety and inclement weather have stayed home earlier today. And so we thought rather than just coming tomorrow, we'd have this conversation today. And we've been meaning to have this conversation for a very long time. And so tonight, what we want to do is we really want to get into some of the allegations regarding Dr. Martin Luther King, namely, the allegation that he was communist, also that he was a Marxist, and then finally that King was a womanizer. And so while the chat is building, let's get more people in. While we are waiting, yeah, we've had people literally, they've already been in here 20, 30 minutes earlier. Thank God for all of you. Do us a favor, if you would, if you have not subscribed already to this channel, make sure you do that. And when you subscribe, make sure you click the notification bell and hit like so that we could get our content out into the algorithm. The other thing that we ask for you to do is to go ahead and drop your city, your location. Let us know where you are watching from. We've got Nashville, we've got Euclid watching, Houston by way of Chicago. All right, wonderful. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Blessings to you. Looks like South Jersey is watching. Birmingham, Alabama. There we go. There we go. There we go. All right. My pastor and good friend, Troy Goss, all the way from New Orleans, is watching as well. Fairfax, Virginia. God bless you. Oak Cliff, Texas. All right. In the Dallas area, the DFW area. Again, we've got Elyria, Ohio, watching. Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Wonderful, wonderful. Continue to drop your location. All right. And let's see, Montgomery, Alabama, Bay Area. We got St. Pete. Who else is watching? Brooklyn, New York. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. And so, yes, let's get those numbers up. But thank God, I am going to bring my good friend and brother, Cartersville, Georgia is watching, formerly the location and city of where my good friend, actually the brother that I am bringing on, he is no stranger to this channel. He was just with me a couple of days ago, but he actually pastored before moving back to LA in Cartersville. And so, yes, we've got Cincinnati, we've got Jacksonville, Arkansas. Didn't know there was such a place as Jacksonville, Arkansas. We've got Tampa, Dallas, Trinidad, Moore, Ohio, Georgia is watching. All right. We are getting in there. Thank God. All right. So good. Let's go ahead and there we go. Palm Desert. Wonderful. Bishop J.A. Ross, just outside of LA. God bless you. Let me bring my good friend and brother on, Pastor Isaiah Robertson. Again, he is no stranger to this channel, and but he is one of the just one of the trusted voices. We've had these conversations many times before. We've talked about all of the evidence and the information, and so I feel like he is the right person to have this conversation with. He is going to be sharing a lot of information, so he'll primarily be the one that's covering the first two claims, which are essentially tethered together. And that is the idea that King was a Marxist and a communist. And so we're going to talk about these claims, not only in a contemporary sense, but we're going to talk about these claims also in their historical sense. And we'll also discuss the motives behind this resurgence of anti-MLK rhetoric. Right? Where's this narrative coming from, and who's behind the narrative? The whole thing. We're literally going to blow the cover off of the whole deal today, and I've got my good friend and brother to join me in this conversation. And so let's keep getting the numbers up, but let's jump right into it. I know you all are eager, and I'm eager to have, like, this is a conversation that has been in the in development. We've been talking about having this conversation for a long time, and here it is. It's been a long time coming, and here we are. So Pastor Isaiah, God bless you.
Did somebody say snow? It was 80 degrees out here in LA. As a matter of fact, we sold snow cones after service today, Doc. Our youth ministry did a fundraiser, and we were literally chomping down on snow cones after service. So listen, to all my folks on the East Coast, I love y'all. I'm praying for y'all. I wouldn't want to be y'all right about now.
Yeah, this is his way of bragging about the warm weather in sunny California.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna let him have that, because we do wish that we had some warm weather, right? and somebody said very jealous. Yes,
listen, David, I always tell you, West Side is the best side, baby. West Side.
All right. That's a whole nother conversation. we have these things where we go back about East Coast, and we have our own East Coast West Coast rivalry. Right. And so that was standing. Pastor Isaiah, talk to us about first and foremost the let's talk for a little bit about J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI, and the counterintelligence program, also known as COINTELPRO, and not only what their interest was with King, but just a little historical context about what they were doing with other Black African-American leaders at the time. And so talk to us a little bit. Let's frame the conversation so that we can kind of get a better idea of what's really behind these allegations, and also to introduce to some of our audience that these allegations are not new, and neither are their rebuttals, right? So talk to us, brother.
Yeah, I mean, let me shut my phone off. Yeah, so, of course you have J. Edgar Hoover, you have COINTELPRO, his desire to infiltrate Black organizations, Black leaders, his desire to discredit these movements because, frankly, our government was threatened by them. And so you have a lot of guilt by association. Well, Dr. King was being advised by a guy by the name of Stanley Levison. Dr. King was being advised by a guy named Bayard Rustin. They had some previous connections to the Communist Party, and so guilt by association. Dr. King must be a communist, so let's wiretap him. Let's follow him, and let's infiltrate his movement. And a lot of this stems from Cold War era hysteria, where you could find a communist under every single rock. You have organizations like the John Birch Society cropping up. This organization literally thought, listen, y'all, this organization, the John Birch Society, they literally thought that Dwight Eisenhower was a communist operative. Okay, so the same historical methodology that people are using today to try to prove that Dr. King was a communist is the same type of methodology they used to try to quote unquote prove that Dwight D. Eisenhower was a communist. So if you disbelieve that Dwight D. Eisenhower was a communist, yet you believe that Martin Luther King was a communist, something's wrong with that, because it's the same shabby, shoddy historical methodology that's being used to quote unquote prove both. But yeah, so you have an attempt to discredit Dr. King. You have an attempt to discredit the civil rights movement. And then, of course, you have people in the South. You have Confederate sympathizers. They're going to glom onto this because, hey, what's the quickest way to discredit King and the civil rights movement and all of the advances that the movement King is pushing for? Call them communist. As a matter of fact, you'll see signs that they held up. Race mixing is communism, right? So if you could peg King as a communist and the civil rights movement as a communist front, then you could discredit the whole call to enfranchise African Americans. You can discredit the whole push to create a more just society and to ensure that Black people in America are being treated equally. So that's kind of some of the background. Listen, none of what you're hearing is new. All of these grifters, these Johnny come latelys, oh, I'm giving you secret hidden information. This is stuff that you've never ever heard. If they're saying that, they're either ignorant or they're lying. None of these claims are new. They've been around forever. They were debunked a long time ago. And the only reason why people believe them is because they're ignorant or it's confirmation bias. They don't like King in the first place. They don't like the civil rights movement in the first place. And so they're going to believe this not because it's historically accurate or true. They're going to believe this because it fits their white supremacist racist narrative. And so
now, isn't it also true that when you go back into your late 50s, particularly your early 60s, all throughout your 60s, which was a period of shifting political tides. It was a time of obviously social unrest, and obviously the civil rights movement was growing. Racism, Jim Crow racism, was particularly at its probably at its worst. And then of course you had a number of other things. And so isn't it true though that anybody that said anything in the 60s that was deemed anti-American or went against for instance some agenda of the government, it was like the easiest thing to call them was a communist, right? So for instance, people who opposed the Vietnam War, the communist, right? And then you had, of course, you just had your witch hunt. That was the thing. If you were against if you were against anything that was deemed anti-American, so forth and so on. Again, it was very popular to hear in that time people essentially kind of throwing around the term communist or socialist or Marxist in the very same way. And the reason we're bringing this up is because that is exactly what you hear whenever notions are challenged. For instance, Christian nationalism or racial injustice or anything like that. One of the things that, again, this type of people love to do, and again, they are the theological and even the biological descendants of the same people, right? One of the things that they love to do is take terms and use them in order to dismiss the validity of conversations, right? And then they throw these terms out. So today they'll throw out things like DEI, they'll throw out woke, wokeism, and they'll throw out CRT and all kinds of things. Again, to demonize. What they want to really do is create a stigma behind the word. This word is bad. Anybody associated with this word is bad. And then it demonizes. So it does all of the heavy lifting for them in a conversation where they are just regurgitating talking points with their silo or their echo chamber. As soon as they want to dismiss the conversation, even when they don't even know what these terminologies mean, the first thing they go grabbing is communists, Marxists. That's what they were doing then. And today they're doing the very same thing. Oh, that sounds like CRT. Oh, that sounds like ethnic Gnosticism. Oh, that sounds like DEI. Oh, that sounds like wokeism, right? And so there's no real critical thinking in this. And remember, these are the same type people. You don't need facts to convince these people of anything. All you need is slander, hearsay, and the popularity of talking points. And again, as Pastor Isaiah already pointed out, there's this strong confirmation bias that causes people to want to believe it, because it factors into presuppositions and held beliefs that they already have prior to even coming into the conversation. So talk to us a little bit more, dear brother, about the FBI's interest in King and what they intended to do, right? So obviously they wanted to get this communist, Marxist accusation to stick, because that would have been easily the fastest way to discredit the movement. Talk to us about what they were able to find or what they weren't able to find.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and this is what you guys have to listen to. When anti-King historical revisionists claim that King was let's say a philanderer or a womanizer, right? They'll say, well, the FBI has, produced evidence and documents proving that King was a philanderer, a womanizer, right?
Right.
However, when the FBI comes out and completely exonerates King from being a Marxist or a communist, they'll say, you can't believe the FBI. You can't trust the FBI. So yes, it was Hoover's goal to discredit Dr. King by proving he was a communist shill, a communist operative. He failed. They failed at that effort, so much so that, as a matter of fact, in the 1960s, there was an FBI summary memorandum. And in this memorandum, they found that there was no evidence that Martin Luther King Jr. was a member of the Communist Party or that he knowingly cooperated with the Communist Party. So that was in the 60s, FBI summary memorandum. So again, they want you to believe the FBI when it comes to King's relational indiscretions, if you will. But then they say, don't believe the FBI when the FBI comes out and says King was not a communist or a Marxist. Again, in the mid 70s, the U.S. Senate, the Church Committee report, said that the FBI failed to establish any substantiated connection between Dr. King and the Communist Party, despite years, y'all, of intensive investigation and surveillance. So Hoover wanted to discredit King. He unleashed every method from wiretapping to following to all types of methods to try to create this narrative and produce evidence that Dr. King was a communist. That failed, and the FBI later came out and had to admit that effort failed. So you cannot believe the FBI over here and then discredit the FBI over there, right? So that's right. What happened.
And furthermore, given the fact that it is known just of their own efforts, their own mission to discredit not just King, but Malcolm, and essentially every major Black Panther Party, every major leader, Black leader, right? Given that was their goal by any means necessary, they would infiltrate these groups. And their number one strategy and tactic was to discredit. So you got to understand how important this is, right? So, for instance, with the Black Panther Party, what they did, easy to discredit them, right? So what they would do is they would hire Black people. Again, when people are poor, I need to say this: when people are poor, they often are desperate, and when they are desperate, they'll often do things that are immoral, ungodly, shameful, and even things that will sell out their family, their friends, movements that are helpful. When people are desperate, they will stoop to significant lows. And so it wasn't very difficult for them to find willing African Americans who would put on a Black Panther jacket, wear an afro, and they would arm them with machine guns or rifles, and then send them to go rob convenience stores or banks and things like that, just to turn around and say, look at how dangerous these people are. Now, the fact of the matter is that it wasn't the Black Panther Party doing it. It was people dressed like them in most of these instances that were committing the crimes under the commission of the counterintelligence program. And then, of course, voila, who would be on hand when they would be in commission of these crimes? Well, it would be the police, the local police, the FBI, because they were setting the entire thing up in order to create the idea that these groups are subversive. They are dangerous. They are anti-American kind of groups. They're communist. And look, they're violent. They're criminals even. You can't trust them. And so they would do things like that. We know for a fact, and this is, again, documented evidence, that in order for them to stir up strife in the Nation of Islam, they already knew that there was some tension between Malcolm and some of the other ministers in the Nation of Islam over succession to Elijah Muhammad, which kind of created some of the context around Elijah Muhammad's concern for Malcolm and even some of his jealousy. The FBI was aware of that because, of course, how? Well, they had people that were planted into the Nation of Islam who were dressed like NOI members, going to meetings, acting the part, and then constantly reporting. And so what did the FBI actually do? These are the people that folk are attempting to rely upon for credibility when it comes down to the reputations and the legacy of people like King and X and others, right? And so what they would do is write letters from Malcolm to to Elijah Muhammad. I'm talking about letters that were written by handwriting experts, literally mimicking Malcolm's writing style, his choice of vocabulary and wording, handwriting, addressed from his East Elmhurst home to Elijah Muhammad's home in Chicago. Then they would do the very same thing, forge letters, Elijah Muhammad's handwriting style, his choice of words. They would send that back to Malcolm, just stoking and instigating the tension in order to create this type of self-imploding dynamic in the Nation of Islam. And so we know for a fact that that is how the counterintelligence program worked. And what the FBI wanted to accomplish was, here's the goal. The goal was, we want to shut down the civil rights movement. We do not want to see progress in this country that benefits African Americans. We want to shut down the movement. We do not want a civil rights legislation or bill to ever be passed. We do not want Jim Crow laws to ever end. We want to shut it down. Well, the fastest way to shut that down was to take its most visible an influential leader and then say what they were saying about anybody that they wanted to shut down. And that is, this person's not American. The easiest way to make that statement in that time was to say they were communist or they were Marxist. Now, they had all of the resources available to them to actually prove that, right? They had, as Pastor Isaiah pointed out, they had wiretaps, they had video surveil, they had infiltrates, implants, they were present in many of these meetings. They had every means to be conclusive about whether or not he was. Now, when they could not find any evidence suggesting that he was, other groups, some of them from evangelical denominations and others, continued to take that narrative further because they just did not want to let that narrative go. But the fact of the matter is that if the FBI had the evidence in King's day to prove that he was a communist or a Marxist, they would have proven it in his day with evidence, and it would have, in fact, hurt King's, not only his legacy, it would have hurt his movement. Isaiah, for a few minutes, I'd love for you to do this. Let's hear from King as to his own words with regards to things like communism and Marxism, because here's another damning piece of evidence. You've got King's own beliefs, his own writing, his own words with respect to Marxism and communism.
Yeah, and let me just say this before I read King's own words. If you're going to view the FBI's claims as spurious, the claims that you should view as fallacious should be his, the claims that he was a philanderer, these alleged tapes and things of that nature. Why? Because we know, as Damon said, they were actively trying to discredit him at the time. Okay, they were actively trying to deflate his reputation and render him as a hobbled or a crippled leader based on his reputation. So if you're going to view the FBI as spurious and their claims as spurious, those are the claims that you should side-eye versus the exoneration that came later in the 60s and the 70s regarding King being a communist or Marxist. But listen, okay, the digital pit. I want a digital pit boss to listen to this, because here's the thing.
Oh, he can still hear it. He's just banned from in timeout from talking. Yeah, so
okay, good. He's probably gonna leave because he's timed out. I mean,
yeah, that's good. He can.
Yeah, they don't care about truth. They just care about being loud and making a scene.
He can kick his can up the road.
Amen. Amen. So listen, here's how it works. I am going to read King's own words. The only way that you can get around these words is to claim that he didn't really believe them. He didn't really mean them. You don't have to have evidence. You don't have to have anything to support the claim that he didn't mean them. All you have to say is just, he didn't mean them because I say so, and people will believe you. People will follow that line of logic.
Right.
But those of us who are Christians, and those of us who know better, and those of us who believe that bearing false witness is a sin, those of us who believe that slander is a sin, we should really lean in when we're reading the actual words of the person, when we're citing the person's actual words. So this is King, August 1953. The sermon is Communism's Challenge to Christianity. King says this: let us begin by stating that communism and Christianity are at the bottom incompatible. One cannot be a true Christian and a true communist simultaneously. So let us not fool ourselves. These two systems of thought are too contradictory to be reconciled. We must try to understand communism, but never can we accept it and be true Christians. Since for the communists, there is no divine government, no absolute moral order. There are no fixed immutable principles. Force, violence, murder, and lying are all justifiable means. In the third place, King goes on to say, the end of communism is the state. Man becomes only a means to an end. Rights and liberties are simply swept aside. So that's 1953, King's own word.
King's own word.
Another sermon that King preached at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church entitled Loving Your Enemies. King said, now certainly we can never give our allegiance to the communistic way of life because communism is based on an ethical relativism and a metaphysical materialism that no Christian can accept. Shall I continue?
Talk, brother.
Here is an address, Spelman College, April 10th, 1960. This address was entitled, Keep Moving from This Mountain. King said, we cannot solve this problem by turning to communism. Communism is based on an ethical relativism and a metaphysical materialism that no Christian can accept. Again, so King said this more than once on multiple occasions. I'm not done, y'all. Y'all think I'm finished?
Load it up, brother. Load it up.
Here's another
Because
quote.
It's going to be a come to Jesus night for anybody who, after this, persist in the false narrative that King was a communist or Marxist. You have to be committed to an absolute lie, which makes you guilty of sin. So you can't call yourself a Bible-believing Christian knowingly committing yourself to practicing sin against Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by alleging things that King himself in no uncertain terms denied. Keep loading it up, brother. Let's fire it up on these people.
Can a Christian be a communist? This is at Ebenezer Baptist Church, September 30th,
1962.
King says, can a Christian be a communist? I answer that question with an emphatic no. No Christian can be a communist because communism leaves out God. We disagree with the ethical relativism of communism. He goes on to say the end of communism is a state. He says, I could never agree with communism as a philosophical system because it deprives man of freedom. For these three reasons, I'm convinced that no Christian can be a communist, but never can we accept communism and be true Christians. Shall I continue? King, My Pilgrimage to Nonviolence, published article, September 1st,
Hold on, before you read that real quick. Not only did he give that, make that statement in the sermon at Ebenezer on September 30th, 1962, but there is a published version of those statements in Strength to Love between pages 93 and 100. In one statement, he says, since for the communists, there is no divine government, he goes on to say force, violence, murder, and lying are all justifiable means. He goes on to show how that is incompatible with a Christian ethos. And then you also quoted, he says, we must try to understand communism. We must love communists, but never can we accept communism and be true Christians. All of those appear in published versions of things he had stated earlier in that sermon. And so we've got not only the oral form of it in the sermon, but it exists in written form as well. Keep going, brother.
Yep. So King, My Pilgrimage to Nonviolence. This is a published article, September 1st, 1958. My response to communism was and is negative, and I considered it basically evil with all of its false assumptions and evil methods, insofar as Marx posited a metaphysical materialism, an ethical relativism, and a strangulating totalitarianism. King says, I respond with an unambiguous no. Beyond Vietnam, okay, This is a speech, a time to break silence at Riverside Church, April 4th, 1967. All right. King rejects militarized anti-communism, and he frames justice as true defense. King says, communism will never be defeated by the use of atomic bombs or nuclear weapons. We must not engage in a negative anti-communism, but rather in a positive thrust for democracy, realizing that our greatest defense against communism is this kind of positive revolution of values. This is our best defense against communism. How should a Christian view communism? This is strength to love. As Damon says, King says, the trouble with communism is that it has neither a theology nor a Christology. Therefore, it emerges with a mixed up anthropology. And we can literally go on and on and on and on and on. And the only argument to King's clear words is, oh, he didn't really mean it. He was being subversive.
Mm-hmm.
He was pretending.
Right.
What? What are you talking about? Again, as Christians, we should care about slander. We should care about bearing false witness. Because guess what? I can do the same thing to you. As a matter of fact, there's somebody here named Septimus. Septimus.
That's the same guy that I timed out a few minutes ago.
Oh, he came in with a different name. Okay. Septimus, when you make a statement, I'm going to claim that you don't mean it, and I'm going to compel and I'm going to encourage everybody to believe that you don't mean it simply because you say so, because I say so. Okay, you don't mean anything that you're saying in these comments. You're being disingenuous, and you want to know why you're being disingenuous and you don't mean it? Because I'm saying that you don't mean it. You see how the argument goes? Now, as a Christian, you ought to run as far away from that type of argumentation as possible. Now, can we, Damon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can we go a little bit deeper? Can we go a little?
Oh, yeah. Let's go a little deeper, because let me just say this before you go on. One thing that we don't do is we don't step over facts and evidence and then attempt to build opinions and present them as facts, right? You're entitled to your own opinions. You are not entitled to your own facts. So these are facts. These are concrete, indisputable facts. These are actually King's words. To go and say, oh, but I got some other evidence over here that says otherwise, is just lying. And not only are we not going to engage with that, we are saying conclusively that the people who engage in this slander are motivated by agenda.
Yes.
They're motivated by white supremacy, racism, and political agenda. These are not people who are committed to scripture. They're not committed to the lordship of Jesus Christ. They're not committed to integrity. They're not committed to honesty, truth, facts, or anything. These people are committed to their agendas, and they will stop at no immoral end to rehash these worn out tropes and arguments that have been debunked over the last 60 years, right? We're running up on 65. These things have been debunked over and over and over. They are like cult folk. They get in and then they rehash proof text and arguments that folk have been engaging with for years, longer than they had even come along. They come right in, positing this argument as though it's brand new because it's the first time they heard it. Listen, first of all, sir, you are no scholar. Neither is Chad, and neither is any of these pseudo-intellectuals that carry this idea forth. We are dealing with evidence and facts here, not emotions and feelings. And so listen, if you don't want to be timed out, I suggest you sit there, listen, and learn. But if you keep talking, we're going to ban you for good. You either come over here to learn or you go do your own program on your own channel where 4 or 5 other folk will listen to whatever you have to say. But over here, you need to listen.
Don't ban them yet, Damon, because listen, let's take this deeper, because you just said something. You just said that a lot of these arguments against King are being made in very bad faith. And these guys have an agenda, an underlying agenda. All right. And they're not really dealing with the evidence objectively. They
That's
have
right.
an underlying agenda, and a lot of this argumentation is done in bad faith, particularly with Chad O. Jackson. Chad O. Jackson presents himself as some objective historian who's only trying to get to the facts. But in reality, Chad O. Jackson has an ideology.
That's it.
And we're going to show you. We're going to show you what that ideology is.
Good.
And this ideology undergirds his treatment of King and King's legacy. Damon, can you play the clip that says screen recording? It says screen recording.
All right, here we go. Hold on.
This whole idea
podcast, we do whatever we want, man.
This whole idea of mass enfranchisement and everybody having the right to vote, I'm totally in disagreement with. I don't think that everybody should have the right to vote.
Okay, so listen to that statement. This is Chad O. Jackson. And if you're wondering what that insignia, what that logo is on that hat, we're going to get to that in just a minute. But this is Chad O. Jackson saying he doesn't believe in mass enfranchisement. He doesn't believe that everyone should have the right to vote. Now, Damon, I'm gonna upload. Hold on one second.
That's all right. Yeah. We going to work, man. We going to work. We are going to work.
Okay, so I just uploaded. Okay.
I think that was the same one.
Hold on, yeah. 1 second. Because some of you guys are wondering, what did I just see on this guy's hat? Is that what I think it is? Let me answer that question. Hold on, where is it at? I think this is it.
Okay.
Play this one real quick, Damon. Let's see.
Thank you.
You understand that that's a very controversial hat to be wearing, right?
Is it?
I don't know. You explain it to me.
Well, the point of the hat is for exactly what just happened there, to spark conversation.
Mm-hmm.
As
Big Ole Miss fan?
Sorry?
Big Ole Miss fan.
Not exactly. So for me, it's about the fact that I'm a huge lover of history, and I don't feel that most Americans know enough about history. And it's because of our lack of knowledge about history that we continue to fall into the same traps over and over again, as it relates to demagoguery, as it relates to sensationalism, so on and so forth. And this happens on both the left and the right, by the way. But for me, it's about Southern heritage, which I am a huge proponent of. Being a Southerner, my dad is from Arkansas. His entire family is from Arkansas. My mom is from Oklahoma. Their entire family is from that side of the world. And, actually having had relatives fight for the Confederate Army.
Listen.
While the so-called Civil War was raging.
Listen.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions that are purposeful as it relates to what the Confederate States were trying to do. I would argue that the Confederate States were actually staying truer to the Constitution than were Abraham Lincoln and his contingent.
Stop right there. Did you hear that? He believes that the Confederacy was actually more faithful to the Constitution than the Union. Okay? So you have to understand his antipathy for King doesn't just come from nowhere. He is an avowed Confederate apologist. He believes in the Confederacy so much that he sits on podcasts in the year of our Lord 2026, or that might have been in 2025, wearing a Confederate hat because, as he said, it's about, quote unquote, Southern heritage. And y'all think he's objective about Dr. King? Y'all think he's approaching Dr. King's legacy honestly as an avowed Confederate apologist who believes that the Confederacy was on the right side of history? Now. There's something that I want to show you, okay? Because this is the nail in the coffin right here.
Come on, brother.
This is the nail in the coffin right here.
I told y'all, listen, we are not playing games with people who practice revisionist history, and then they try to veil it as though it is some respectable historical methodology or what have you. This is not an intelligent man. This is a man whose brain has been fried in the pan of white supremacy. He is essentially that same character on Dave Chappelle's skit that was blind and believed that he was a KKK grand wizard. And then when he found out that he was black, divorced his wife for being a N-word lover, right? This is the same type of dude that we're talking about. He doesn't believe anything historically factual. He believes that the Confederates were fighting for good. States' rights, as he suggests that they were fighting for, not fighting for the right to actually own slaves so that they can continue driving their economic engine of on sugar plantations and cotton plantations. He thinks no, they were doing the right thing by the Constitution, and everybody else has got it wrong about why the civil war was even fought and what the actual role of the Confederacy. So he's calling it some sort of heritage or legacy. I noticed that that's what racists nowadays do. They revision history to say, hey, my Confederate flag toting is really more about Southern heritage. The fact of the matter is that the flag is the symbol of rebellion. It is the symbol of a group of people who desire to succeed from the Union and challenge the Constitution. So that is rebellion. That is treason, even, and that is not Southern heritage. It's again. This is the type of person that we are talking about. Keep cooking, Isaiah.
Yeah, so you have to understand that Chad comes to Dr. King's legacy not as an unbiased historian, but he comes as a Confederate sympathizer, somebody that believes the Confederacy was on the right side of history, somebody who doesn't believe in mass enfranchisement. He doesn't believe that everybody should have the right to vote. Listen, let me hold on. Let me we got it. Because what we're doing is that we're framing this discussion around not just claims, but motives.
That's it.
Motives matter. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, load it up. I'll put it on.
Yeah. I think this is it.
All right.
Part of that, I don't mind. How was the Civil Rights Act of '64, Voting Rights Act of '65, and the Equal Housing Act of '68 an overreach of government power?
Well, the Voting Rights or the Civil Rights Act of 1964 infringed upon one's individual right to freedom of association.
How so?
Insofar that if I'm a business owner and I put in my own blood, sweat, and tears, and I took out a loan maybe to start my own business, I should have the right to discriminate against whom I wish to discriminate. I should have the right to serve whom I wish to serve. I should have the right to hire whom I wish to hire. And the decision as to whether I should stay in business or not should be left not to the government, but to the free market.
So you should be able to discriminate against who you hire based on the color of their skin?
Yes, absolutely. Here's the
So
thing.
wait a minute.
We have to be adults. We have to be adult enough to have this conversation.
So you
running to the government.
As a black, hold on, I have to ask this. As a black man in 2025, you are saying that the Civil Rights Act of '64 was an overreach of constitutional authority because you should be allowed, as a business owner, to discriminate against someone based purely on the color of their skin.
You should be allowed.
Chad is on the show. Somebody's asking, why don't you have Chad on the show? Chad is on the show. And Chad on this show has just said he believes the Confederacy was on the right side of history. He believes that the Confederacy was honoring the Constitution more than the Union. He doesn't believe in mass enfranchisement. He doesn't believe that everybody should have the right to vote. He supports a poll test. And he also doesn't believe in the Civil Rights Act of 1965. He believes that business owners should be allowed to discriminate based upon race. Why does he believe that? Because he's a Confederate sympathizer, because separate but equal. Brown versus Board of Education, 1954, right? Southern states, they didn't want to implement this and they didn't want to end Jim Crow, and they argue we should be able to serve whoever we want. Okay, so of course, when it comes to King, you're not gonna like King. You're gonna want to discredit King. You're gonna be against a King's program, and rather than being honest about King's legacy, you run to long discredited lies because you don't support his policies. Now, here's the nail in the coffin right here. And then I know we want to talk about some other things.
Oh yeah. No, you're doing good, man.
Listen, we have given you King's own words, right? We have given you King's own thoughts. But now let's go forward. And let me show you what King was actually trying to enact and what King was actually trying to bring about in a little town called Grenada, Mississippi. Now, the reason why we have these clips is because I dealt with this weeks ago. I talked about this weeks ago, and I pulled these clips. See, King doesn't know. Chad doesn't know anything about MLK's campaign in Grenada. I'm sure he doesn't talk about it in his documentary. I asked him, he wouldn't answer. And so watch this now. Watch this clip. Damon is the one that starts out by saying Chattel Jackson.
King was saying was geared toward a Marxist, globalist, communist idea.
Start it over.
I just want to say that
listen to the claim here.
All of the things that King was saying was geared toward a Marxist, globalist, communist idea.
Okay, pause it.
I just want to say that.
Pause it. So here's the claim from Jackson. All that King was saying was geared toward a Marxist communist framework. This is what Chad is getting all these ignorant people to believe. But now listen to King here. Go ahead, press play.
We feel that this is the most significant move for this community. One of the things that we've been saying all along is in the future, all over the South and all over the United States, we're going to build more businesses in the Negro community. I want to ask
right there.
you to support it.
Pause it. So in Grenada, Mississippi, there was a supermarket that was extremely discriminatory, okay, discriminating against the black population in Grenada, Mississippi. It was across town. King comes to Grenada, Mississippi and says, hey, since they're discriminating against us, let's build our own supermarket. This supermarket will compete against the supermarket across town. Now, let's continue. Let
me move it back just a little bit here. All right.
Wait, hold on. Before you start it, King says that he wanted to implement this program throughout the United States in black communities. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Marxism doesn't call for expanding private businesses. It calls for abolishing private ownership of the means of production altogether. But King, on the other hand, comes to Grenada and says, let's start our own businesses. Let's go forward.
All right. Good.
In the Negro community, I want to ask you to support it. Now, everybody can't get $100 worth of shares or $1,000 worth, but I believe almost everybody can get at least $5 or $10 worth.
Pause it.
And secondly,
pause it. So Martin Luther King, what he wants this supermarket to be is a cooperative where the community will actually buy shares.
So that they can become owners, co-owners.
Yes.
In their own.
So again, this is completely antithetical to the means and ends of Marxism. Let's build a private business And then let's allow you guys, the people, to buy shares and become owners in this private business. Continue. Wait a minute. Let's continue.
That is not socialism. It is not Marxism at all. They don't know. They're like the people who claim, oh, that sounds like CRT. That sounds like DEI. I always notice that the people who say these things can never define what those things are. If they had been listening to King, they would clearly know that he was anti-communist, anti-socialist, anti-Marxist. I'm going to back him up just a little bit so we can hear that statement again.
But I believe almost everybody can get at least $5 or $10 worth. And secondly, to build housing units for low and moderate income families that we ourselves can own.
Stop there.
I'm going to be meeting with them.
Hold on. Did you hear that? Private home ownership.
That we ourselves can own. That is the antithesis of socialism and Marxism.
All right, continue.
Ourselves can own. I'm going to be meeting with the ministers in Grenada, urging them through their churches to build homes all over this city for the Negro people so that we can
Pause there. Martin Luther King is wanting to partner with churches as a Marxist, as a communist. He's wanting to partner with churches so that they can be involved in building privately owned homes.
Not government-owned homes.
Not
government-owned homes, privately owned homes.
Privately owned homes, right.
As King said, for Negroes.
Yes. Keep going.
Live in honor, and we can live in dignity, and that we can live in sanitary housing conditions all over this city. There are thousands and thousands of Negroes all over the state of Mississippi earning less than $800 a year. This is criminal. This is a shame before the Almighty God.
And we can clearly see that King's...
Stop it. It's a shame before who?
Before Almighty God.
He grounds his work. He grounds his activism in the Imago Dei and the holiness of God.
Yeah.
So this is what I want to say, Damon. It's one thing to say, yeah, King made statements against communism because he was trying to hide the fact that he was a secret communism. It's another thing to hear King advocate for projects that are completely antithetical to communism and Marxism. Listen, it would be like me being a secret atheist, but yet I'm encouraging people to build churches, and I'm encouraging people to go to seminary, and I'm encouraging people to read their Bibles. All the while, I am a secret atheist. I'm a secret atheist, and I ultimately want to see atheism flourish in the country. I am working against my own ends.
Right.
This is what King would be doing. If King was a secret Marxist in what he was advocating for in Grenada, Mississippi, he'd be literally working against, undoing Marxist thought and Marxist economics, right, as a secret Marxist.
Yeah. It's funny because these are the same type of people who claim that anybody talking about speaking out against social injustices and systemic and structural racism, that they are Marxist and that they're ethnic Gnostics, this, that, or the other. The irony is, this is how funny this is to me. Like people like that, people like that are not, they are not smart to me at all. The irony is that what they are employing is a Gnostic hermeneutic. They are essentially saying that what you actually hear people say and read doesn't mean anything. The actual meaning is is secret, right? So we are actually hearing King. So while they are accusing us of ethnic Gnosticism and accusing King of Marxism and all these other things, what they are actually guilty of is employing a Gnostic hermeneutic, wherein there is secret knowledge, not what you actually can read, not what you can, because you can read King's own words. We can hear King in his own voice say this. What they are alleging is, but that's not what that means. The meaning is secret. The meaning is below the surface of the statement. These are the same people who claim to be Christians and claim to be against Gnosticism and against that type of hermeneutic, and yet they are practicing it here when it comes to their revisionist history. This is disingenuous. It's dishonest. Like what I'm saying is these people are not ignorant in the sense of they don't know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They are wicked in their agenda, and they're hoping that you don't know what they are doing. We are here to blow the cover off of so again, let me just say this. I know I get worked up, but this is why, because some folk are now beginning to come around to be like, Richardson, man, I thought you was off your rocker when you were saying that a lot of these people are not Christians. No, that's exactly why we are not calling many of these people our brothers and sisters in Christ. They are not. They may be brothers and sisters in their own echo chambers that they refer to as Christianity, that Frederick Douglass rightly considered the Christianity of this land. They may be brothers and sisters with respect to the Christianity of this land. But the reason that they are not our brothers and sisters is because, like Douglass argued in a separate binary, we belong to the Christianity of Christ. They clearly do not. They are committed to lies, to slander. The Bible says this: 6 things does the Lord hate, and 7 of them are an abomination. Feet that are swift to get into mischief and trouble. The Bible also talks about the person who lies and slanders, not just slander, but the person that slanders or speaks untruths about their brother. The Bible says God feels a particular way, not just about what they are doing, but about that person. And so we can say definitively that these individuals and their slander, not only of King, but their entire misrepresentation of African Americans, African American history, the Black church, so forth and so on, is rooted in white supremacy, in hatred, in lies, in wickedness, in demonism. It's antithetical to everything that is biblical and names the name of Christ. And yet the thing that is most despicable is that these people are running around saying that they are Christians. And we're just trying to say, listen, as despicable as they are, it just becomes even more despicable when they attempt to do these things in the name of Jesus. And we are clearly saying Chad Jackson and folk like that, them people don't know Jesus. They can't possibly know Jesus and be this committed to lies. The Bible says, Jesus's words, when he, the Spirit of truth, will come, he will guide you into all truth. There's no possible way that these people have believed on Christ and have been indwelled by the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit, who is the Spirit of truth, and they are this committed to lies. The very Holy Spirit in sanctification will guide us into all things that are truthful, not just biblical truth, but all things that are truthful. And the way that they double down, step over facts and evidence, looking for any agreement with their commitment to lies, we ain't talking about spirit-filled people. We are. We're talking about people who probably have demons, but certainly not the Holy Spirit. These are just egregious lies that they are telling, and it's overwhelming evidence for anybody who is an objective reader of history. There is overwhelming evidence to the opposite that King was a communist, Marxist, socialist, or whatever they try to claim. This is not hard stuff. Believing that he was is like believing that there was some conspiracy to steal the election from Trump in 2020. You got to be of that kind of mindset. After the Republicans sealed the vote, saying it was all legit, you got to be of the same mindset as those kind of folk who will say, oh no, there was an attempt to steal the election. You've got to be in the cult of MAGA and have that kind of mindset. These are the same type folks, y'all. We're not talking about different kind of people. We're talking about the same kind of people. Go to April Chapman's page. She claims to be a Christian, but when you go to her page, you can clearly see that what she's stomping for is not the Bible, it's Donald Trump's support. That's what she's sold out to. And that is why she's got all of these white people and sunken place black people and sunken place Hispanic Latin folk following her by the thousands, is because they also are committed to the same kind of lies and delusion. If you think that all you got to do, again, take off the blinders, take off the lens, and go literally do the same work that we've done, and you will absolutely see that none of what they are saying aligns to the facts. Talk to us, Isaiah.
Yeah. So here's the reality, right? If we wanted to be dishonest, disingenuous, and if we wanted to lie like they do, we could do the exact same thing. I'm no fan of Jerry Falwell, no fan of the moral majority movement. And if I lacked scruples like Chad Jackson and some of these guys caping for him in the comment section, if I lacked scruples, I could claim that what Jerry Falwell was really doing with the moral majority is he wanted evangelicals to turn to Rome. And he really secretly was a Roman Catholic, and he was working to convert Protestant evangelicals to Roman Catholicism. Well, how can you make that claim? Well, because Jerry Falwell started the moral majority with a guy named Paul Weyrich. Paul Weyrich was a Roman Catholic. As a matter of fact, while they were building the moral majority together, Paul Weyrich was a committed Roman Catholic, and all Jerry Falwell was just a shill to introduce Roman Catholicism to Protestant evangelicals that didn't know any better. And they used the issue of abortion. See what I'm doing there? They used the issue of abortion as a Trojan horse to ultimately introduce Protestant evangelicals to Roman Catholicism. You see what I could do there?
Yeah.
I could do the exact same thing. And guess what? I could probably find some cockamamie historical facts. I could probably find some ridiculous things and make that argument in the same way that Chad and others are doing to Dr. King. Listen.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'll turn it over.
No, you go ahead.
Not only was Dr. King not a communist or a Marxist, but y'all, Dr. King had disciples. Okay? Dr. King had people that followed him, that believed in him. One of them was, watch this, Ralph Abernathy. Ralph Abernathy wrote a book called Walls Come Tumbling Down. People that don't like Martin Luther King will point to Ralph Abernathy as a credible source. Ralph Abernathy, though, was a part of King's movement. He was a disciple of King. Never once do they say Ralph Abernathy was a communist as well. Never once do they claim that Ralph Abernathy was a secret Marxist because he was a disciple of King. No, they hold out Ralph Abernathy as a credible voice.
Same thing with Andrew Young.
Huh?
Yeah, same thing with Andrew Young.
Right.
Former mayor of Atlanta and former U.S. ambassador.
Yes.
Never do you ever hear anybody say that he was a Marxist, that he was a secret communist. No. So you make a really, really strong point. If he were these things, we're his disciples.
Yes. Fred Shuttlesworth. We have John, come on, help me with his name, y'all. Good trouble. John Lewis.
John
All
Lewis.
Right?
Yeah, there we go.
On and on and on. And nobody claims that they were communists and Marxists, but yet they were King's disciples.
Right.
This goes to show you that there's no there. There's no weight to this ridiculous argument that King was a Marxist. It's simply people that hate, so many of them hate King because he advocated for black enfranchisement. A lot of these people claim to be Christian. They're racist to the bone. Their God is white supremacy, and they hate King because he is an example. He is a repudiation of white supremacist ideology.
Right. Now, one thing let's go ahead and put this to rest. I'm not even going to put up any of the comments of these folk because, again, I'm gonna start kicking them out of the room if they keep trying to litter the chat with foolishness. But here's the one thing, because again, it's called a straw man fallacy. It's when you attempt to misrepresent somebody's argument in order to tear it down, right? And so when insincere people are presented with facts, one of the things that they love to do is create some straw man version of your argument. And then when that doesn't work, they create so-called whataboutisms. Well, what about this? And what about that? In order to avoid dealing with the evidence that you've presented. Another thing that they like to do is moral equivalence, and then they'll throw other things up. Like, for instance, somebody in the chat, well, as soon as we pointed out April Chapman's commitment to MAGA, oh, you guys must have been all for Kamala. See, so that has nothing to do with the conversation. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put all of your so-called talking points, your the ones you love to go to in order to dismiss valid conversations because you really don't want to hear truth. You just want to dismiss it. We are not Democrats. We are not leftists. We are not liberals. We are not on some Democratic plantation. None of those things apply to us here. We are Bible-believing Christians. We vote our conscience, and intelligently according to whatever things are important to us locally, in the state, in the government, so at the federal level, or what have you. The fact of the matter is that we're not committed to any political parties over here, nor to leftist, nor fundamentalist kind of ideologies. So whatever you want to try to say in order to dismiss what we're saying, none of those things are absolutely true. And to persist in those kinds of things is again, you're just trolling. You have no real argument. You have no real comeback for any of this. And so you want people to say, well, don't take them serious because they're just liberals. Don't take them serious because they're just Democrats. And you know, they're disciples of Barack Obama or whatever. Anything to not have to deal with the fact. Well, you're not going to be able to get to pull that off over here. You can either deal with the facts or not deal with them, right? It's all up to you. But the fact of the matter is, don't go calling yourself a truth teller and a Christian when you're actually committed to lies. See, we're going to have you come to Jesus tonight. We're going to call you to repentance. We're going to call you exactly what you are, right? And one thing you're not is that you're not Christians. You don't really believe the gospel. You have no commitment to any kind of truth whatsoever. You love lies. And the person that Jesus said was the father of lies may even be your daddy, right? Because that's what you're committed to. You're committed to lies, and Satan is the father of lies. So don't bring that stuff over here. We're telling you now, keep that over to wherever you are, because what we're dealing with here is evidence or lack thereof. So let me just say this real quick, just so that we can do a quick recap for people who are joining late. There is this claim that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Was a Marxist, that he was a communist, and therefore he can't be trusted. The civil rights movement really was him essentially undermining the U.S. government. It really wasn't good for. It wasn't what people thought it was. It wasn't really for African Americans. It was really his way of pushing a Marxist communist agenda, right? So we have shown conclusively from King's own sermons, his own writings, that he disavowed communism. Marxism, said it was incompatible with Christianity, not only from an economic and theological, an economic standpoint, but also from a theological standpoint. So here is the way that the pattern goes in terms of people who make these claims. One, they point out, well, he advocated for economic redistribution, and he criticized capitalism. That's one leg that they think holds up when they say King was a Marxist. But just any kind of critique against capitalism, first of all, doesn't make a lot of people critique capitalists regularly critique capitalism, right? So capitalism it will run away like a train under power if it is without any kind of critique, control, so forth and so on. King regularly critiqued capitalism because he saw the ways in which it was being used by people committed to white supremacy, racist structures were oppressive to African Americans. He's not critiquing the entire idea of capitalism, but the ways in which capitalism had been co-opted by structural and systemic racists in order to oppress African Americans. That is the basis of his criticism of capitalism. They also would suggest that, well, he worked with people that had communist ties. You brought up Ruskin. We've already shown that if those ties made King a communist, then why couldn't the FBI actually make a real tangible link between Ruskin and King on the basis of King's own ideology? And so just because someone had been affiliated with socialism or socialist Marxist ideology and was now in King's movement doesn't mean that King was a socialist or Marxist. That's essentially a leap in the dark, an attempt to connect two things that they can't even find a link for, and neither could the FBI. So the one thing doesn't have anything to do with the other. King was not being secretly influenced by a school of people committed to Marxism or Marxist thinking. And then, of course, you debunk the idea that the FBI, because the FBI had labeled him as a communist, therefore he must be a communist. And you pointed out how the FBI later had to exonerate him because they, of course, did not have any actual evidence to prove so. Here's what I'm going to do as we transition into the next piece of what we're talking about. I think it is worth discussing when the FBI is credible in some sense and when they are not, because both sides will appeal at times to use of the FBI. So for instance, when you mentioned, hey, they later said that King, they couldn't find any evidence. And then later we talk about counterintelligence program and all these other things. They'll just say you're just doing the same thing that you're accusing us of doing. And so let's put that whole argument to rest and talk about when is something the FBI said useful, factual, and credible, and when isn't it credible or factual. So how do we
David, just real quick before you go there, because I have to address this because I see this in the comment. They're asking about Stanley Levison, Clarence B. Jones, Jack O'Dell. You already talked about Bayard Rustin. Listen, guys, listen. Be smart. Use logic. I just gave you an example of Jerry Falwell, who joins with Paul Wyrick, a Roman Catholic, to launch the moral majority. Does that automatically mean because they partnered together that Jerry Falwell is a secret Roman Catholic? Or does that mean that they gathered around a core concern, right? Abortion. Well, we really know what the concern was. Paul Ryrick later came and they said the concern was really segregated schools. But the front was abortion, right? They shared a core concern and they gathered around that core concern. Secondly, Levison and Rustin and the others had no connection to the Communist Party during the time that they were advising Dr. King. Now, I know someone will say, yeah, but there was a book written where somebody said that Levison believed in communism till the day they died. You know what that's called? That's called hearsay. What are the facts? Levison was not a part of the Communist Party. Bear Rustin was not a part of the Communist Party when they advised Dr. King. Thirdly, every president has had speechwriters. Does that mean that the president believes in all of the ideologies of their speechwriter? Does that mean that the president embraces every attitude and every notion that the speechwriter has? No. Every leader has speechwriters, contributors. And I don't have time to get into how in the 60s and civil rights movement, they specifically leveled the claim of plagiarism against black leaders even more than white leaders, and a lot of those claims were spurious. So I don't even have time to get into how easily debunkable it is that everything King wrote was plagiarized and everything he said was just, listen, every president has had contributors and speechwriters. That doesn't automatically then mean he agrees with everything that the speechwriter believes. So stop it with the lunacy. Stop it, and be Christian and love truth.
There we go. So let's talk about before we transition. When we talk about the FBI's claims, what can be taken as credible and what can't be taken as credible, just so that we can establish how we are operating in this conversation. I'll say it this way. When the FBI, so I want everybody to hear this. When the FBI's mission known to undermine Black leaders and Black movements through fraud, through infiltration, through creating creating imposters and falsifying evidence and all kinds of things that they have used. The fact of the matter is that what they were doing was illegal. Let me be clear. The FBI was operating illegally, and what they were doing against Black leaders was illegal. The counterintelligence program undermines the Constitution of America. And so it is a historical and documented fact that this is how they went about operating in order to undermine Black leaders. And so anything that they said about those Black leaders are going to be subject to severe scrutiny because they are not credible witnesses to that end. Now, here's the thing. Here's when something that they say can be taken as credible. When they are saying, here is our mission, here is what we were trying to accomplish. When they tell you that they could not accomplish it, that is believable because they have every vested interest in doing what they said they were committed to doing. Case in point, they were committed to undermining the civil rights movement and Dr. King by drawing some connection and proving somehow that King was a Marxist. We know that's what they were trying to do. They put the allegations out. When they could not prove it, and they admitted that they could not prove it, well, then that is believable because the people who had every vested interest in using that angle to destroy him, they would be the people who would best know whether or not their angle was successful or not. It is there that that testimony is then believable. They have no other reason to lie on themselves in terms of their own agenda. We already know what they were trying to do. If they said we were unsuccessful, then they were unsuccessful by their own admission. There would be no reason that is credible to think that they would be lying about what we know they already had a vested interest to do. So when we are using the FBI statement to that end, we are doing that because they could not, they would not have any reason to lie about that when we already know what their committed agenda was in the first place. That makes that statement believable. If they had the intention to destroy King and they had evidence, they would have used it. Hence, the same organization that says we didn't have evidence, well, then that is believable. Because if they did, guess who would have used it? They would have. That is how we are establishing credibility with respect to whatever the FBI might say. However, when they are saying false things about the reputation and the behavior and the false allegations about many of these leaders, their claims alone cannot be taken to be true. They would need to present, just like we saw when Malcolm went to Mecca, Saudi Arabia. We don't have audio, so we don't simply have audio of Malcolm being over there. We have video with audio of him being over there, and we have pictures. Given the fact that the FBI not only surveilled King with bugs in his hotel rooms and wherever he went, but they also used video camera and pictures. None of such evidence has ever been produced, video or pictures, that corroborate with anything that they have ever said about King. The only thing that they had ever produced that has been widely disputed and repudiated was an audio. And we all know audio is not significantly reliable, especially when you have people who can sound like other people and imitate voices, so forth and so on. When this audio was presented to Coretta Scott King, even she said that that is not my Martin. So the fact of the matter is they decided that they would use the angle after the communist Marxist angle fell flat and failed. It was then that they decided, well, we've got to try to get them another way. We can't get them with the Marxist communist angle. Let's get them with the moral angle. Let's allege that King has had affairs, that he was taking part in orgies, so forth and so on. Let's do that. Mind you, however, an organization with all of the resources that they had, if these things were true, they would have come out in King's day. Remember, what was the whole purpose of it? To discredit him in his day, not 65 years later, in his day, in order to stop the civil rights movement from ultimately pushing a civil rights legislation. So if there were, in fact, pictures, they would have used them then, because that's how you shut the movement down. If there were video then, they would have used them then, because that would have been concrete evidence that they would have used to discredit King's morality. The fact of the matter is that they have not produced evidence, and anything that comes out as far as audio in 2027 is taken to be just as discredited as the audio that they already attempted to use that was already falsified and non-credible. They manufactured the evidence. So short of pictures and video, which if they had it, they would have used it in King's day. Short of that kind of evidence, the FBI has never produced evidence, and their own little memoirs, notes, writings, and accusations are not evidence at all. In fact, if the FBI were ever called to the stand in a court of law today, they would be a non-credible witness because for the very same reasons that material witness are disqualified today. If they have committed to the same crimes, if they have a pattern and a track record of lying even under oath, all of those kinds of things make them a discredited witness. So the fact of the matter is that you couldn't even bring the FBI into a court of law, put them on a stand and use them as a witness, because everything that they would say would be tainted as a result of what we know their criminal activity was, their mission, their stated mission and goals were for counterintelligence program. Everything that we know about them would disqualify them from being a credible witness. So it is in that respect that when they are talking about the reputations, the behavior, events, and things that cannot be corroborated, it cannot be corroborated and aligned with other known facts that are substantiated by evidence, then the FBI is lying. And you take it exactly the way that you would have taken all of the other things that they said about other Black leaders. That is how you deal with the FBI as it relates to evidence. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. Sad. The most sad thing about all of this, y'all, is that MLK is dead and gone. He cannot come on to this platform or any other platform and defend himself. He can't share what actually happened, his side of the story. And so we're forced to believe hearsay. We're forced to believe the claims of people that obviously didn't like King, working to discredit King. Some of you are sitting there saying, well, what about Ralph Abernathy? What about what he wrote in Walls Come Tumbling Down? What about all that?
We'll get into that. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, you want me to hold off on that?
Yeah, hold off on that. Let's see.
Okay.
Are we done with the Marxist thing? Because I want to make sure we've tied that up, that there shouldn't be. We already know that the folk committed to Chad's documentary, their minds ain't going to change anyway. We're not even here to, again, facts don't convince those type people anyway. So we're not worried about them. But we just want to make sure, as we say in the Black church, are all hearts and minds clear, because we have clearly demonstrated via King's own writing and his words that he disavowed communism, Marxism, socialism, the whole joint, and that attempting to claim that he was a Marxist is really using some Gnostic hermeneutic that says you can't believe what you actually read and hear, but you can believe what we are alleging to be secret knowledge. We know that this was the truth, even though we are reading in black and white or hearing orally him say something different. The truth lies beneath the surface of all of that. That's just Gnosticism. And so it's funny that the very people who level the claim of ethnic Gnosticism and all this other stuff are the very people practicing Gnosticism when it comes down to how they are interpreting historical information, such as King's own testimony with respect to Marxism and communism. Any other things that you want to say on that before we talk about the womanizing claims?
Yeah. I mean, well, no. Let's hold on. There's some I want to say.
Okay,
Let's go into the womanizing claims. and then I'll say it when we get into the womanizing claims.
Yeah. So again, the FBI is not a credible witness. They're not a credible witness. And somebody was like, well, I got a problem with Damon all the way up until he said, if they had it. Well, no, I don't know how you were with me all the way up until that. That was their goal. If they did have evidence, they would have used it because their goal was to stop the passing of the Civil Rights Act. The fact that it passed meant that they could not use any of their allegations against him because it just didn't stick. But if they had evidence, probably would have stuck. Now, I'm not saying that the act wouldn't have passed, but it would have done significant damage to King's legacy and the legacy of the civil rights movement. The fact of the matter is that what people have been hanging on to all this time are allegations that were actually started by the FBI. And the fact of the matter is that's where the accusations originally came from. And so if you're holding on to accusations from the FBI, then you're choosing to hold on to accusations, not evidence, because you don't have any. And you can't say you have any because no such evidence actually exists. Claims are not evidence, and neither is accusations. Let's not pretend here that they are. So the fact of the matter is that the onus are on the people who are attempting to stand 10 toes down with this claim that he was a womanizer and that he participated in orgies and all these things. The onus is on these people to show actual evidence for it, not claims or accusations. That is not evidence. Go look up what evidence actually is. There are a number of points of what constitutes evidence. Let me just even read some of what could, some of the different types of evidence. You've got direct evidence, i.e. eyewitness testimony, video recordings, right? Signed documents, things that obviously check out to be authentic. You got circumstantial evidence, right? Facts that imply a conclusion when combined logically. That could circumstantial. You've got physical documentary evidence, emails, contracts, medical records, financial statements. But again, it requires authentication. What do we know about the FBI? They regularly produced fraudulent documents in order to push their agenda. So even if you were to have that type of evidence, it would be like throwing out all of the cases of a rogue cop that planted evidence on people. You wouldn't be able to use it in court because they literally did manufacture letters. They did manufacture things like financial statements. They did manufacture this kind of stuff. And so unless you can actually prove that these things are actually authentic, that they've not been redacted, and 65 years later, they've been untouched, and that you can prove their authenticity, I know for a fact that you can't actually do any of that. Then there's expert testimony based on specialized knowledge, relying on obviously established scientific methodology and not on speculation. Here's what's not evidence: hearsay. Somebody told me that my granddaddy was a friend of King's from the SCLC, or people say it. People say it. It's a common known fact. Everybody is saying it. That's called hearsay, right? The original speaker's not present. They cannot be cross-examined, and reliability cannot be tested. Plus, there's actually no real evidence to present to say, here is something that now places the burden of proof and the onus on the accused. So all of the burden of proof is on everybody speaking matter-of-factly about what they know for a fact King did. I'm telling you, you don't know Jack Diddley, because there is no evidence that actually supports any of that. And we are going to go point by point through the three-legged stool. And I'm going to tell you now, a three-legged stool is already shaky. The most stable stool is going to be one with 4 legs. This one only ever had 3 legs to begin with. We're going to knock it over real quick because one of those legs was the FBI, and that leg can't stand. Now, if you want to believe in that, then you're a person who does not deal in reality. And so we're not even going to argue with you if you think that anything that the FBI has to say or present is even credible to begin with. So now that the FBI stool, that leg of the stool is already out of the way, you're dealing with a 2-legged stool. And that is even shakier now than the 3-legged one. And so let's get into some of the so-called allegations, what they are, and let's examine them point by point to see whether or not this is actual evidence or whether it is actual hearsay. Throw out what you wanted to say, unless you wanted to come back around and grab it.
No, this just popped into my mind, Doc.
Go ahead, bro.
You know, the ironic thing, Damon, is that many of these people that hate King and believe everything the FBI has to say about King will look at some other files that were just released, and they'll see another person in these other files that were just released, and they'll defend that person. They'll ignore those files. They will call those claims spurious. However, they believe everything that the FBI has to say about Dr. King. The irony of that, there are some new files that just came out, and I'm wondering if these people will be consistent and go where the evidence is where the evidence leads in those files. All right,
and this is the kind of statement that I want to get after. People will say, well, you know, because you got people who will land in different places. You got people who say, well, hey, man, I don't care whether he did or didn't. I appreciate what he did accomplish, civil rights, this, that, or the other. None of that stuff is any of my business. And if he did, doesn't change my mind about him. Right. And then you got people who are like, well, he said that, you know, people ought to be judged by the not by the color of their skin, by the content of their character. And if King was this type of way, then we ought to be judging him by the content of his character, blah, 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 right? You got all these people, right? But listen, you can sit there and say you don't care about his personal life, but let's be real, he liked to get down. That's a claim that you are making. You're attempting to essentially argue in a circular fashion. How do you know he liked to get down? Was you there? Do you have video? Do you literally have pictures of him getting down? What you are doing is simply repeating a popular, essentially an urban legend that was ultimately started by the FBI. Listen, I'll tell you this. There was a time when I thought these things were true as well. Like I had always heard these things, right? It never changed my mind about who I thought King was in terms of the good that he accomplished with the civil rights movement or any of that. But it had been repeated for so long that I thought that there was some basis to it. And so I would be repeating it too. One day, just like I did with Easter and just like I did with Christmas, one day I said, I wonder what the actual evidence is that supports this. Mind you, I was a person who felt like King he was a good dude regardless of this anyway. So I didn't have a dog in the fight, right? Like I said, I had the first I ever remember hearing about King. This was part and parcel part of that entire narrative. I had always heard it, right? Never changed my mind about what I thought about the guy. But one day I said, you know, when people say things like this, these things are pretty devastating accusations to a lot of people, right? And what is the basis for it, right? Is there any real evidence to support it? Or are people simply repeating something as fact because it is popular, right? And this whole notion about saying, well, he was a human, therefore he was capable of those things, that's not evidence either. You're capable of murder. That's not evidence that you ever killed anybody, right? So no, this is not evidence. What you're doing is making a claim just like everybody else. But let's get into what those claims are, and let's talk about whether or not there is evidence. So here's one of the first things I want to point out. So the FBI, the FBI documented as an attempt to smear King with what we already said was a motive to destroy the civil rights movement. The FBI claimed that King had a constant paramour. Constant paramour, as in he had a person that he was regularly having an affair with. They left that unnamed, right? That's what they said. That's what they put in there. Now, I want you to think about that. If you've got any brains, and I'm assuming that most people on here do, but there's some folk in the chat that obviously don't. If this is what they said, so let's see if this holds up as evidence. Now, if this person was a constant paramour, which meant that they had observed that she was constantly around King and that they constantly had this regular rendezvous. Ask yourself this question. If they were surveilling King, pictures, audio, video, how would they not know who this constant paramour is? How is she unnamed? How is she just a paramour and not an actual person that they don't already know everything that they need to know about? You want to know why? Because they didn't know who she was either. Such a person did not actually exist. If she existed, they would have known as much about her as they actually knew about King. Now, this person later gets a name, but the name is not provided by the FBI. It's actually provided by a historian by the name of David J. Garrow. Garrow was the one who said that he's using FBI material. So let me show you how this works. Garrow is assuming that the FBI is correct about King having a constant paramour. He is not throwing out this accusation. He's assuming that the accusation is credible in spite of everything that Garrow knows about COINTELPRO. And so Garrow then turns around and puts a name to this constant paramour. Garrow is the person who says that she is Dorothy Cotton. And then now I want you to put your thinking caps on and say, well, where did Garrow get that information from? Number one, he got the information from the FBI. And all the information he got was they said he had a constant paramour. That's not evidence. That's a claim. Well, where did he get the information that it was Cotton? Where did he come up with that? That was his own assumption, not based on evidence, not based on fact, but his own assumption. That's where he got that from. That's not something that that is supported by any actual evidence. Garrow essentially filled in the blank using his own assumptions, and assumptions are not evidence. Now, let's move on. So we've already knocked down the FBI's allegation that and let me just I think it's worth, let me back up. I got to back up and say this because this comes before the constant paramour claim in the FBI notes. In 1964, King believed, and many of his closest associates believed that a letter that he received had come from the FBI. Till this day, we do not know factually where it actually came from. Most likely it did come from the FBI because they were always trying to hide their hand. But nevertheless, in the letter that came from this unknown person, most likely the FBI, an anonymous letter was sent to King along with an audio tape. In the letter, it said it called King a colossal fraud and an evil and vicious one. That's what they accused King of being in the letter. The letter also alleges that King, that they knew of King having sexual orgies, committing multiple adulterous acts, and immoral conduct. This is the actual wording of the letter. This letter is threatening King, and they're saying, we know about the sexual orgies, the adulterous acts, and the immoral conduct. And they say, now, you know what to do. There is only one thing left for you to do, and you know what it is. So they're essentially trying to threaten King by saying, we've got so-called evidence that these things exist. You're really just a colossal fraud. You're evil. You're vicious. We know about orgies. We know about affairs. We know about immoral conduct. There's only one thing that you can actually do, and you know what it is. They're essentially alleging that King should take himself out, that he should take himself off the board, that he should kill himself. So it was in 1964 that this anonymous letter alleges that. And so again, Beverly Gage, a historian, discusses the now uncensored letter. Now, ask yourself this question again. Here is a letter written by we don't know who, that is making these allegations. King was a fraud. He was evil. He was vicious. He committed sexual orgies, adulterous acts, this, that, or the other. Okay, ask yourself this question. Here's this anonymous letter making all these allegations. Is this credible? Is this evidence? If it's credible how? We don't even know who wrote it. Number two, they don't present any evidence. They present accusations and claims, and then they want King. You can tell what their real goal was. They wanted King to kill himself. Well, if they really had this evidence to use against King, the fastest way to embarrass King is to actually put this evidence out. But did they do it in 1964? No. It doesn't come out in 1964 because they don't actually have this evidence in 1964. So I ask again, is this evidence or is this an accusation? If somebody says it's evidence, I'm going to block you because you're a troll, right? You're a troll and an idiot because that's not evidence. It's not evidence, right? So we've got this suicide letter written by some anonymous person alleging these things. That's not evidence. That's number one. Number two, we've got the FBI's claim that King had a constant paramour. Unknown person, no evidence to support it, just something that a discredited criminal organization led by a person I don't even want to get into, J. Edgar Hoover, because that's a whole other show.
Yeah.
And yet he's running the point. That's like, let me show you what that's like. Believing anything that came from the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover is like believing anything that comes out of Orange Peel's mouth. And we all know he's not credible at all. He's sitting there lying about how many people are watching that failed documentary about his wife. Ain't nobody going out to watch that but a handful of MAGA folk. Certainly it's not a blockbuster, but let him tell it. The theaters are all packed out. He is not a believable person. He is not a believable person. And believing him is like believing J. Edgar Hoover, right? So those two things have been knocked down. Let's go on. Let's go on. What else do we have? And again, we talked about how David J. Garrow was the one who put name to this supposed constant paramour, not using evidence, but using speculation. Speculation is not evidence. Let's go on. So the FBI is out of the way. There's only two legs to that stool. Who else? All right, let's deal with Ralph Abernathy. Ralph Abernathy was an associate of King. He was a titan, a major, we're not going to take anything from him. He was a major pillar in not only the SCLC, but the entire civil rights movement. I will not take anything from his legacy in terms of what he did and what he accomplished with King. But when he wrote this autobiography and the walls came tumbling down, there is a passage in this book where Ralph Abernathy says that he goes into saying that King had extramarital affairs. And so he goes on describing, let me, hold on, pull this up. This is what Abernathy says. He says that the night, I should say the morning of King's assassination, when they stepped out of, when they got home back, I should say when they got back to the Lorraine Motel, let me go back. They were at the home of a woman by the name of, and I'm gonna get into more information on her, but we're gonna get into. I'm gonna tell you what she said. Her name now is Ajua Abi Natanbu, Nantanbu, right? So they were at her home all the way up until roughly about 2 in the morning. Now, Abernathy says, before they even got back to the Lorraine Motel, he says that somewhere around 1 in the morning, King came out of the room with a woman. He's essentially suggesting that it was her because it was her home. And then he says that after they got back to the Lorraine Motel, that he spent time with another woman between 3 and somewhere near dawn for about 3 hours. He says, then a third woman with whom he was involved came to the hotel room in the early morning and left upset at having found his bed empty. When the third woman returned after 8 a.m., a tiff ensued in which, according to Abernathy, King shouted and knocked her across the bed when she criticized Abernathy for covering up King. Now, so somebody would say, well, this man was a close confidant with King. He was in King's inner circle. He was a major pillar in the civil rights movement. Why would Ralph Abernathy say anything like this about King? Here's what we're not going to do. We don't need to figure out what his motive was. What we're here to do is find out if there was any evidence to anything that Abernathy said. That's all we have to do. We don't need to figure out whether he was jealous or not. That's not our concern. Our concern here is, but is it evidence though? So let's get into what actually happened that night. Now, Abernathy and the FBI actually knock each other out if we're considering what evidence is and what it is not. Remember, what did the FBI say? He had a constant paramour, right? And they don't even name this person. What Abernathy is saying is that King was dealing with multiple women the morning of the assassination. Now, I want you to slow down so you can hear what I just said. Here's what Abernathy did not say. He did not say, now, mind you, when is he talking about these women? He's saying the morning of the assassination. In all of the things that he said about his time with King, there is no statement of Abernathy where Abernathy has knowledge of a constant paramour or somebody that King was dealing with other than his wife on a regular basis. According to Ralph Abernathy's own statements, he doesn't even know about such a person. Everybody that Ralph Abernathy is talking about, he's talking about something that he saw or he claims to have saw King do that morning. If Ralph Abernathy had known about this constant paramour that the FBI alleges, which if anybody would have known, it would have been Abernathy. Why doesn't Ralph Abernathy write about something that would have been so obvious of a fact? Why doesn't he mention something that would have been so critical and so established so that everybody knew about it? Well, there's only one reason that Ralph Abernathy doesn't mention this constant paramour, because he doesn't know of one that existed. Ralph Abernathy's statement doesn't have anything to do with anything that King was doing prior to that night. Ralph Abernathy's allegations are about things that he only saw King do the morning of. He doesn't mention any of this behavior at any other time that he ever spent with King. It's nowhere in his autobiography, which means that Ralph Abernathy doesn't know of any behavior like this consistent with King's reputation outside of that morning, which means that nothing that Ralph Abernathy said in his autobiography corroborates with what the FBI said, and neither does what the FBI said corroborate with Abernathy. So what do we have here? There was no constant paramour, no known such a person. Abernathy doesn't know of any such a person, and his allegations have only to do with things that he claims he saw King do that morning. He never mentions anything about knowing King do any of this in any of their other travels, in any of the other times that they were in hotels. None of that is in his autobiography. So let me ask you this question, since you believe Ralph Abernathy so much. If King was doing this on a regular basis, why doesn't Ralph Abernathy know about any of it all the way up until that morning? Why doesn't he write about it any other time? Why doesn't he write about it in 67? How about in 66? Any record of it in 65? Any record of it in 64 when the letter came out? Abernathy knows nothing about any of those things. As far as Abernathy's testimony is concerned, King is living a moral life up until that morning. Because if he wasn't, where is the statement from Ralph Abernathy about anything that King was doing like that prior to that morning? I'll tell you, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So let's get into how I know what Ralph Abernathy is saying is false. Number one, before they got to the Lorraine Motel that morning, which is probably somewhere around 2, 3 in the morning, right? Somewhere around 2, 3 in the morning. They are at the home of, and it's not just Abernathy and King, but it's other associates of King's as well, right? So you had people there like Bernard Lee, Andrew Young, and Jesse Jacks, Hosea Williams, so forth and so on. There's a whole house full of people, and they are at the home of a civil rights colleague who now goes by the name of Ajua Abi Nantan Boo, Nantanbuu. Ajua Abi Nantan Boo. She says Ralph Abernathy is lying. And not only does she say it, everybody who was in the home that night having dinner, they got there according to the timeline somewhere after 10, after King had spoken at the Church of God in Christ, when he gives this I've been to the mountaintop speech there. They get back, and now they are in her home. They're all talking. People are drinking. She is hosting a dinner with King and other aides. Now, she says Ralph Abernathy had way too much to drink, and he went into her bedroom and passed out. Mind you, Ralph Abernathy said he seen King and this woman, he doesn't name her, coming out of her bedroom around 1 a.m. Well, who's telling the truth? Well, if Abernathy, according to not only her, but everybody there, said Ralph Abernathy was drunk and passed out, how does he see King coming out of the bedroom that he was in, laid across the bed, passed out? So there's a bird that just can't sing here. There's something in the water here that's not right. Now, we don't just have her testimony, we have everybody's testimony that was there that night. And they all said he was pissy drunk and passed out in the room. So he's alleging that King was in the room with this woman and they must have been doing something sexual, but he was the one in the room passed out drunk. So we've got multiple witnesses in the house that said that is flagrantly false. Further, we have their statements about King's mental state. Everybody there, including Ajua, said that King was significantly anxious, that he was nervous, that he was acting fearful, that he was chain smoking, and that he was talking about dying. King had a feeling that he was going to die and that his death was imminent. Interestingly, he died later that same morning, and he was worried about that. Now, let me just ask you this question. Since we all know, physiologically speaking, that sex involves about 85% mental capacity or mind, right? And about 15% physical performance. A man that is like Jesus in the garden, feeling the pangs of death coming closer. This is not a man that's thinking about having an orgy, going back to the Lorraine Motel an hour later and making a booty call. This is not King's state of mind. Because I don't know anybody who thinks that they're going to die, is chain smoking, talking about death, that's going to put their mind in a mental state to smash 3 women in the span of 3 hours before dawn. That doesn't even sound right. Right? It's men can't perform simply because they have penises. You've got to be in a certain state of mind in order for your apparatus to function. And when you're worried about dying, chain smoking, probably having a sippy sip, and feeling death creeping up on you and knowing that it's getting close, you're not going back to the hotel to smash 3 women. That just doesn't make sense. And anybody that can believe that, that's like believing that Jesus would have gone to a comedy club after leaving the Garden of Gethsemane. Ain't nobody in the mood to laugh when you know you're about to die. Just like nobody is in the mood to be doing all that Abernathy alleges that King did when they got back. Now, supposedly, King and this is another thing that I found to be false. Abernathy says that him and King were sharing a room. I've been to the Lorraine Motel. King's room and Abernathy's room were across from each other. That's what Abernathy said. Now, here's the thing. Abernathy said that he didn't see King come into the room until sometime around 7. I guess this is the dawn that he spoke of, that he had been supposedly in another room with some woman for roughly 3 hours. Then another woman comes over, and then a third woman, to which King gets in an argument with this woman, and then he picks the woman up and throws her into the wall. This is what Abernathy claimed happened within the span of 3 hours, from roughly around 3 in the morning until 7. And when he woke up, this is what was going on, right? Now, conveniently, right, there's nobody there to say, well, we were in the room with King, or we were right next door and we know these things didn't happen. So Abernathy's most colorful accusations come at the Lorraine Motel between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. And mind you, King would have smashed 3 women in 3 hours and beat up 1. That's what they're asking us to believe. That is what Abernathy is alleging. Now, that just doesn't work. And we, again, Abernathy's own claims and the FBI's claims cancel each other out. The other associates at Ajua Abi Nantambu's house, their testimony knocks out Abernathy's credibility, because he lied about King coming out of the room with her at her own house, when in fact, she says, how could he have known it when he was in the room drunk himself the whole night? So essentially, Abernathy had been drinking from the time they got there. So let's say they got there around, I think the timeline says about 10:30, 10:45, right? Abernathy's drunk. So let's say from between 11 till 2, Abernathy's passed out. How does he see King coming out of the room, which he would be alleging that he was in the living room and seen them coming out of the room, when all witnesses in the home said Abernathy was the one in the bedroom, laid across the bed, and he was the one drunken? And so we have Abernathy there literally telling a lie. If Abernathy made that story up, how is his colorful story at the Lorraine Motel believable? So there's the second leg to that pathetic stool upon which people are so daggone convinced that King committed sexual orgies and all of these other things. So what's the other point? What is the other point? Where does it come from? Well, that would come from Georgia Powers. That would come from Georgia Powers. She was later, she had been part of their movement. She was an associate, a known associate, and she was later part of the Kentucky legislature. And she wrote a book called I Shared the Dream. Now, she wrote a lot of things about King, about their movement. None of it is salacious. None of it sounds like anything that Abernathy said. None of it sounds like anything that the FBI says. There is one single statement that Georgia Powers makes that they are reading into because they need it to fit their narrative, where Georgia Powers said that she cared for King and they were intimate. Now, intimate can mean a lot of things. Hosea Williams was intimate with King. Bernard Lee, Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, Ralph Abernathy. If you were in King's inner circle, you would have been close with King. You would have shed tears with King. You would have heard King say things that other people didn't hear King say. You would have cared for King. You would have felt King's pain. You would have even felt some of his burden. Hence, you would have been intimate with King. But to make intimate definitively means sexual is to do exactly what we always say shouldn't be done with scripture. That is to eisegete. That is to read into a statement that you cannot draw out of a particular statement. And so you have to fill out what you think that means. There's nothing around her context that suggests it was sexual. In fact, she never even uses the word sexual, and she never even intimates at it being sexual. She never details what she means by that. She just says that they were intimate. They were close. Now, you can speculate, but my point is this, that that's exactly what that is. That's speculation. It is not evidence. So you cannot take that statement and then make it mean what you want it to mean simply because you are so convinced. Well, if you're convinced, that's fine, but you're not convinced by evidence. Let's be clear about that. What's convincing you is hearsay. What's convincing you is speculation, not evidence. So there's that third stool. Somebody says, well, what did Dorothy Cotton say? She didn't say anything. David Garrow is the one who's using her name. It is his voice that you are hearing. I'm telling you that these people are not smart, nor do they read. There is no evidence. I'd like for somebody to show me what the evidence is outside of allegations, speculation. Show me the evidence. Go ahead,
Damon,
bro.
as a matter of fact, in her memoir, in Dorothy Cotton's memoir entitled If Your Back's Not Bent, she emphasized that she respected King deeply. She emphasized that she saw him as a pastor and a leader, that their relationship never crossed the line. Keep Dorothy Cotton's name out your mouth.
That's exactly what I'm saying. She said nothing to support what Garrow says, and he was the one that put her name to fill in the blank of the whole constant paramour thing. Her own words do not corroborate with that. So there is no evidence. Some dude keep talking about, what about this? What about that? What about evidence?
Right.
What about evidence?
Right.
What about you shut up until you produce evidence? Throwing out one name after the other is like throwing out scripture as proof text and not actually interpreting it contextually. That's exactly what that's like.
Denialism. This guy says denialism. He's making a comment about denialism. No, denialism is that Donald Trump won the 2020 election when he actually lost. Denialism. Let's ban these trolls because they're taking us off track.
Exactly what I'm doing.
And they're actually guilty of what they're claiming we're guilty of. It's deflection, and it's ridiculous. So let's talk about real denialism.
It only ever they're gone. It only ever had those three stools, and none of those three stools ever presented evidence. Ralph Abernathy, I don't care what his motive was, it's irrelevant to me. He discredits himself and he cancels out the FBI statement. Ironically, the FBI cancels out his statement because neither of them know what either of them were talking about. Let me show you what I mean again. Ralph Abernathy knows nothing about a constant paramour because, again, I reiterate, he's only talking about things that he claims to have seen King do that morning. He never mentions that King lived immorally, or he never claimed that he ever saw King doing any of that prior to that morning, which means Ralph Abernathy knows of no pattern of immoral behavior in King's life, which also means Ralph Abernathy knows nothing about some constant paramour. Further, watch this. If the FBI were right, we've already established the fact that they would know who this Constant Paramour is because this is the FBI. That's what they did. So she wouldn't be some unnamed person. They would have had as much evidence on her as they had on King. But watch this. I got something else that makes both Abernathy and King and the FBI's claims ridiculous. The FBI was at the Lorraine Motel when they were at a Jewish home and after they arrived back at the Lorraine Motel that morning. The FBI had been there. Number one, they have bugged both of their rooms. So anything that Ralph Abernathy alleges happened, they would definitely have that on audio. Second, they would have had pictures of that. Third, they most likely would have had video. They were there. So it is not possible for any of what Ralph Abernathy said to have happened outside of the gaze and the knowledge of the FBI. They had them under surveillance from the time they arrived in Memphis. So again, they both cancel each other out. Georgia Powers is not evidence. She didn't even say that they had some affair. So she can't even be used as evidence when she never even admitted such. You got to read into her statement to suggest, and Dorothy Cotton says nothing to support. In fact, she denies the very notion that her and King had a, as the song said, a thing going on, right? So again, I'm asking all of y'all who swear King was just bussing everything down, white women and all kinds of other stuff that we done heard. I'm telling you, put the lies away, because that's exactly what they are. There aren't legs for those lies to stand on because there's no evidence. Now, if you say, well, I choose to believe it anyway, well, don't ever have a conversation with me, because I only deal with folks who are dealing in reality. I don't argue with people who are dead set and bent on believing what they want to believe in spite of the evidence or the facts. I don't deal with those kind of people, which is exactly why you never hear me having conversations with Black Hebrew Israelites. They don't even deal in reality. These people will look at red and call it blue. They'll look at a snake and call it a dog, right? And then say, you got your information from the white man, from the Edomites, right? So how could you argue with somebody who doesn't deal in reality and facts don't convince them? That's why I'm not even dealing with some of y'all, because y'all just want to believe what you want to believe because it serves an agenda. You need Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to be immoral. You need him to be wicked. You need him to be a liar. You need him to lack integrity. And why? So that you can push your agenda that the civil rights movement was a fraud to begin with, right? You know, for people who believe that, you guys are some kind of evil has gotten hold. Isaiah, it's on you, bro.
Yeah, bro. You've said a mouthful. The only people that still believe that King was any of those horrible things, their brain is just fried, and that's basically what we have to say. And you hit the nail on the head. What's really the goal, y'all? What's really the goal? The goal of Chattel Jackson and others is not to convince us, because we know, we see, all right, we use logic and reason. We understand. The goal is to influence public policy. Remember, Chattel Jackson is a Confederate apologist. At the end of the day, he wants the Civil Rights Act rolled back. He wants the Voting Rights Act rolled back. He wants to see the King holiday taken off the calendar. He wants to see Juneteenth taken off the calendar. And so he wants to be used as cover for MAGA to point to him and his pseudo scholarship and his quote unquote research as justification for rolling back policies, civil rights policies. This is ultimately the end game. And see, this is why it's dangerous, because now these guys have a sympathetic president. This president doesn't deal in reality. This president traffics in lies and conspiracy theories. And so Chad O. Jackson is feeding the masses with exactly what this movement, this MAGA movement, traffics in. Okay. And so that's really the end game here, y'all. We can share the facts until we're blue in the face. But the reality is that people have been duped by white supremacy. They hate black people more than they love God. They hate blackness more than they love God. And therefore, Dr. King and his legacy have to be attacked and assaulted because that makes them feel better being white supremacists. And that's what's really happening here. That's what's really going on. And anybody that still, continues to believe the lies, they're ignorant or they're avowed white supremacist.
Yeah. So I mean, so again, we know folk will go on and they'll say whatever they want to say, this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, there's no evidence. And people saying that allegations are evidence are lying. In fact, they would never want that to work against them, because people can say all kinds of things, right? And yet those things never be true. But just because they're alleged to be true doesn't make them. Well, what would make them true or not? Evidence or lack thereof, right? So if somebody said, well, hey, Damon was staying at the, I was out with Pastor Isaiah here a couple of weeks ago, and they checked me into the Sheridan, the LAX, and there were a couple other people staying there as well, right? And from the event that we were at, I think one or two other people. I think it was one or two other people, but nonetheless, let's say somebody recognized me, and they were staying there too. Now, they could easily allege and say, yeah, I was with Damon that night. And somebody will say, well, what evidence do you have that you were with him that night? Well, one, they can prove that that's where I was that night. And let's say that there's evidence that I was there, and there is, right? Well, there's evidence that I was there. And let's say, two, they produce evidence that they were there that night. Right now, that obviously puts us in the same place, puts us there around the same time. What it doesn't prove is that I even know who this person is, that I've ever even seen this person ever in life, that I've had any engagement with this person whatsoever, right? It doesn't mean any of that, right? I may have not even been aware that they were even there. That's number one. Number two, it also doesn't mean that we even crossed paths just because we stayed had a conversation. Doesn't mean anything. It just means that we were in the same place at the same time. And so for many people, those two facts, well, Damon was there, the woman was there. She alleged this happened. That's kind of close. That must mean she's right. That's how people treat evidence. And what I'm saying is, that's all, that seems cool when people are using that against folk that you don't like. But that ain't cool when somebody does that to you, because that's not evidence. It's not. What it is slander. And you can't call yourself a Christian and be running around talking about Martin Luther King matter-of-factly did this and that. You don't have evidence to say that he did. And to continue to say that he did is to lie and to slander and to demonize a person to the harm of their reputation and legacy. That doesn't make you a Christian. In fact, I tell you whose side that really puts you on. There is an evil being, an agent called Satan. The very name or word Satan means adversary, right? And what is Satan known for? One of the things he's known for, the Bible says, is bringing false accusation. He's called the accuser of the brethren. I just find it interesting that folk can sit on the internet, call themselves Christians, and then actually be engaged in slander, bearing false witness against a person with no evidence, and then think that somehow they're exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit and doing the Lord's work. You are, in fact, doing the devil's work, because the devil is the one who wants to bring false accusation against believers in order to tear their credibility down and ultimately harm the witness of Christ. He's the only one interested in doing that. So when I see professing Christians align with that, I know who they're working for. I know who's motivating them. And it's definitely not the Spirit of God, right? This is a sinful agenda. It's a demonic agenda, and it is a white supremacist, racist agenda. And it's got all kinds of folk aligned with it. White, black, Latin, and Asian, and all kinds of stuff. But we have demonstrated that there is no evidence to support any of their claims. He wasn't a communist, wasn't a racist. Communist, wasn't a Marxist, and was not a womanizer, as it is commonly alleged and believed to be true. Again, show us the evidence.
And here's how the white supremacy, the lunacy, here's how it's perpetuated. Because we have a guy in the comments saying, stop defending a man and defend the gospel.
He's going to get kicked out too.
Yeah. So here we are.
Yeah, go ahead, bro. Yeah.
Here we are as Christians being truth tellers, telling the truth, while others are out there lying and slandering. And this gentleman wants us to stop telling the truth, but I guarantee he hasn't gone over to Chad O. Jackson and told him to stop slandering and lying.
Right.
This is exactly how it works. When Christians stand up,
rebuke this coward.
People need to act Christianly and stop lying and misrepresenting people as Christians, right? You have people that will shoot arrows at us.
Come on.
For calling out the liars while having nothing to say to the actual liars and slanderers. And then trying to be sanctimonious by saying, I care about the Bible. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You care about perpetuating false narratives. You care about continuing the lies and the slander, which is why you're criticizing us for telling the truth while saying nothing to the liars and the slanderers. Get out of here. You don't care about the Bible. All you care about is your white supremacist version of Christianity.
He just got bounced. He got bounced. These are the type people we want you to notice. If you can see the pattern, you see the type people who come in, they claim to be Christian. They claim to care about the gospel, when in reality, what they're trying to do is defend lies. And once we start, if you ever notice the pattern, every single time lies are exposed, uncovered, rebuked, and just repudiated with historical fact, scripture, and all of that, then they accuse us of derailing from the gospel and not using scripture and all of that, when in fact their whole mission is antithetical to the gospel. As Isaiah said, they're not truth tellers. If you're not a truth teller, then you don't even believe the gospel, because the gospel is truth. The gospel is the proclamation of the very person who said, I am the truth. So if you're not committed to truth telling, then you're not committed to Jesus. You're not committed to following Jesus, right? So it's just interesting. White supremacy pushed the lie that Jesus was white. Truth tellers came back, pushed back. expose the fact that that was not only a lie perpetuated through art, but through media, through print, through the academy, and all of that. And as soon as it started challenging it with facts, then all of a sudden, what did these people say? That's off message with the gospel. Let's just get back to the gospel. There is no color. God doesn't care about any of this. Well, funny that none of that was being said as long as white Jesus was the avatar for Christianity. All of a sudden, now it doesn't matter. It doesn't. No. What's happening is lies are being disposed of, and their defense is all of these deflections. It doesn't matter. Let's just get back to what the gospel is saying. Maybe what you're really afraid of is being exposed, right? And so now that we're pushing back against this anti-MLK thing, then all of a sudden, I just want to hear about the gospel. Well, we'll go start your own live and just talk about the gospel, but don't come over here dictating what we can and cannot say. In fact, we are doing gospel work by even doing this in the first place, right? So we're just trying to show you how committed to Satan's agenda these people are. And the fact that they are claiming to be Christians is shameful. This is why I'm telling you, we keep saying these folk are not our brothers and sisters. And so for all of you caping for Charlie Kirk, well, he got on and was spreading these same old lies. He was spreading these same old lies about King. He was involved in orgies. He was a serial philanderer and extramarital affair, blah, 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 off of what evidence? Since he was so Christian. Right? As I'm telling y'all, we are not confused about anything. These folk have lost their minds. They are not Christians. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that, what we're seeing right now, I think is similar to what Elijah experienced when he thought that he was the only faithful one. He looked out to the landscape and he saw rampant rebellion. He saw the prophets being killed, and he wondered if there were any righteous. And God had to remind him that there is a remnant, right? What we're seeing in America right now, particularly after the death of Charlie Kirk. Now here's the reality. It's always been there, y'all. It's always been there. The young, restless, and reform movement, the reason why I jumped ship and got out of that was because I saw how racist the culture was. And so I'm not surprised that this kinism and this and this Christian nationalism, white Christian nationalism, is popular mostly in reform circles. I saw that coming a mile away. None of this is new. And yes, at times we look out in the landscape and we see idiots like this Clark Kent who's spamming lies. And he probably calls himself a Christian, but he's a liar and a deceiver, just like all the rest. We see people like this in mass, and we begin to wonder what's going on. What's happening? Are we the only ones? Well, the good news is
I don't believe that all black people have.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
I want to play something. You sent me this video. We're going to wrap up here, but you sent me this video. This is important, y'all. We're going to say this as we close. Isaiah and I have made a number of statements, not just in this segment, but also in previous segments. And we have proven beyond any shadow of doubt. We have said it over and over, and we have made our case. The reason that these Christian nationalist folk love people like Cory Minor and Virgil Walker and Chad Jacksons, this, that, or the other, because as we did in one segment, we said that they are self-hating black people. April Chapman's and all of these type of Vody Barkham, we have proven that they are those type people. Further, they sit down and have conversations with these folk, and these folk, they see them as their brothers. They see them as brothers in the Lord. Third, we've got them literally racist endorsing the Chads and the Vodis and the Virgils as the ideal type of blacks. These are the only type of people that they think are Christians that are black. They think black culture is inherently demonic. And the only way to be saved from that culture is not simply to become a Christian. It is to become their kind of Christian, which is wrapped in white contours of thinking, white supremacy lenses and attitudes, so forth and so on. They don't even believe that the millions and billions of other, or I'd say the millions of other African Americans who are Christians, they don't even believe that they have legitimate Christianity. They're only willing to accept the kind of blacks that have proximity to them, who have essentially imbibed and have taken on white supremacist culture and ways of thinking. Now, I am going to let you hear them say that they love a guy like Virgil, Vody, and Chad, that those are the guys that they think the rest of us need to be like. And to be clear, the people who are saying this are bona fide racists who consider themselves to be Christians. Listen to what they're saying.
Complicity with.
Hold on.
I don't believe that all black people have their own complicity with the ratchet ghetto culture that I'm describing generally. I actually don't believe that.
An equivalent would be like saying, I believe Clarence Thomas is guilty of the murders committed in Chicago.
No,
we're not saying that.
But what I am recognizing is that any black in America that doesn't participate in that culture is doing so self-consciously. They know that I'm not going to walk in those sins. I know that that is the general pattern of black culture in America today, and I'm not going to do it. And the reason I know that Samuel Say knows that, Vody Barkham knows that, Virgil Walker knows that, is because they all say it. They talk routinely about what happens to them when they say, no, I'm going to be a good, upstanding Protestant Christian. I'm not going to walk in those sins. What do they get called? Uncle Toms. They get called all sorts of names. Oreos, right? Or an Oreo. Black on the outside, white on the inside.
Okay.
They know it. They know that if they won't walk in these sins, they're going to get reviled by the people walking in those sins. Why? Because they self-consciously repudiated that culture and say, I'm not going to walk in it. Yeah. So we can't just pretend like we have all these, black Christians in America walking around, the ones who are really brothers and are obeying the Lord. And
listen, see, the ones who are really brothers for them are those types of black men who accepted white supremacy as their construct for Christianity. They don't even think that the rest of us who call ourselves Christians that are black are really Christians. They don't even believe that. You can see the kind of black people that they endorse. Clarence Thomas and, Samuel Say. You see what they, and so essentially their message is that black culture is inherently sinful and demonic. All humanity is inherently sinful in the biblical sense, right? But particularly black culture. And the only way for it to not take hold of your life is that you consciously move away from it, like certain black people have, the ones that they name. The rest of us essentially are hopelessly lost to a condition of being black that dooms us to being sinful and demonic and given over to ghetto ratchet culture, so forth and so on. So you could see who the racists name as the ideal types of black. So this is why you never heard Vody ever denounce Doug Wilson, Joel Webb, and this, that, and the other. I've got video where he's sitting around being interviewed by them. You never heard them denounce any of it. You never heard Virgil. Till this day, Virgil refuses to do it. You know why? Because they're sellouts. They were and they are self-hating black people who have bought into a false version of Christianity. These men are not believers in the gospel. They are believers in a false, imposter, counterfeit version of Christianity that essentially whiteness is the gospel for them. That is what they are guilty of. That is why they are not our brothers. That is why they are not Christians. And I don't know how much evidence we need to present. Because if you can see all that and you're still walking away thinking we're the problem, then it's very clear you are the problem.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So we've all we've done for the last 2 hours and 42 minutes is just tell the truth. We've cammed up. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm in South Central LA and I just heard some gunshots outside the door. So we've cammed up and we've set the record straight. And here's how white supremacy works. Okay. We will be demonized. We will be castigated and laughed at. But watch this. Watch this. None of our facts will be refuted.
That's it.
Okay. They will. Oh, they're just socialists. They're just Marxist. They just. Yeah, but remember, we showed you evidence, actual evidence and proof. Now, at the end of the day, we know that this really isn't about evidence and proof. This is about power, right?
Yeah.
This is about legislation, right?
Bing.
This is about discrediting a man to further their own white supremacist agendas. We understand that. But listen. We at this moment, we need to be clear-eyed, and we need to understand that there are a whole lot of wolves in sheep's clothing out there. Wolves in sheep clothing out there, okay? And we can see them manifest by how they play fast and loose with actual reality and with the truth. I am certain that guys like Clark Kent, Chad Jackson, Virgil Walker, certain that they have embraced what Frederick Douglass called the Christianity of this land.
And again, no, there are not actual files of what he was doing. There is not.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Anything that they said he was doing is not evidence of anything he was doing.
That's right.
Evidence is a video, pictures. They don't have any of that. So
And all this guy is doing is just spamming the same thing over and over again, which lets me know that he either copied and pasted that from ChatGPT or whatever. He's copying and pasting the same thing.
Constantly saying that claims are evidence doesn't make it evidence.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, man, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
You know what's sad? That and I have the book here. Man, where is it? It's up here somewhere. I won't be able to get my hands on it because who knows where it is, but nevertheless, is it on my desk here? Hold on. Got some books over here. J.H. Jackson. There is an autobiography on J.H. Jackson. Do you have a copy of that? I think you've got a copy of it in your. I got it
right here.
Yep. I just found it as well. There you go. See how readers do this. This is how this folk who read this. The challenge of Joseph H. Jackson. How America's most powerful black preacher became a forgotten man. So J.H. Jackson led the National Baptist Convention, probably as long as I think only one other preacher led it longer than him. right?
His
But
predecessor.
there we go. But he pastored. What was the church that he pastored in Chicago?
Pilgrim.
What was it?
Pilgrim.
Pilgrim, right? Pastored Pilgrim in Chicago. Now, J.H. Jackson obviously was essentially a rival to King. He, for all intents and purposes, he disliked King. Some might say he hated King's guts. Right? He and there's all kinds of stories about Jackson and King. Like there's a 1,000 stories out there. Listen to any one preacher and they might have one or two. It's just an ongoing kind of thing. Well, the feud between Jackson and King, is one almost of an urban tale, right? So in one instance, when they renamed the street that Jackson's church, the church he pastored, renamed it King Drive. Literally Jackson petitioned the city to change the address of the church to the street crossing over King, so that the address wasn't named after essentially who his enemy was, right? So clearly this man couldn't stand King. Now, what's interesting is that the Chad Jackson types and the April Chapmans and these people, they have stooped so low in their anti-King hatred that they have revived the Joseph H. Jackson King feud just to conveniently side with Jackson simply because he hated King. And so they think that by doing that, they're giving you yet another reason that you should also dislike King, because you ought to be like this man and hate King too. Like, these people are so slimy and pathetic that they don't. I think if I were to say that there's anything that they might have in common with Jackson, is that Jackson was essentially that type of non-progressive gradualist that felt like, let's not buck against white supremacy. Let's just let it run its course. And for King, that wasn't an issue. Jackson, however, was a compromiser, known to play in the system and along with the system, which sounds a lot like your Chapman MAGA types and your Chad Confederate types. They are against anything that symbolized progress for African Americans. They actually think today those things weren't good. Well, that's a lot like the way that Jackson thought. So it's very interesting that they're doing videos reviving this animosity that Jackson had for King in order to be able to conveniently find an ally for their anti-King hatred. That is how pathetic and despicable these people are. And yet they're calling themselves Christians. I challenge you that if you listen to these people, unfollow them. They are cantankerous, cancerous, toxic. They are anything other than edifying, godly, and biblically sound. I'm telling you, these people are dangerous, and they're spreading these dangerous narratives out of their agenda to feed their base, which is mostly your Christian nationalist, white supremacist Christian types who hide their racism behind misinterpreted scriptures and false revisionist history, so forth and so on. So I'm done. These people, I tell you, they literally run my pressure up, man.
Yeah. Doc, listen, after a long day of ministry and preaching, man, I'm spent. We thoroughly refuted all of the ridiculous claims. We have set the record straight. You know, there's no way you can listen to this objectively and walk away saying, yeah, King's a communist. No way. No way. If you walk away from this podcast saying that, it's because you're dug in and you care more about white supremacy and white Christian nationalism than you do the truth. And so yeah, my I'm spent. We've trotted out primary sources, videos. We've even showed you where Chad Jackson's antipathy towards King comes from. All right. If you're just now watching, you got to go back and watch the beginning. All right. If you are committed to the lost cause and the failed cause of the Confederacy, of course you're going to hate Dr. King. All right.
Right.
So these guys aren't approaching King's legacy objectively. It's not good faith. These are bad faith actors. And, you know, I mean, I didn't have time to talk about it, but, you know, Chad Jackson also claims that Abraham Lincoln and the radical Republicans colluded with Karl Marx and Engels.
Yeah.
So like his the way he even approaches historical study is flawed. And here's the reality. If you're gonna listen to Chad Jackson and believe that King was a communist Marxist, then you have to believe that the radical Republicans and Abraham Lincoln, they were in the tank for Marx and Engels, because
right.
Chad Jackson is using the same historical methodology to make the claim about Lincoln and the radical Republicans as he is Dr. King. So you can't take one without the other. All right. So you might as well go ahead and say that probably one of our greatest presidents of all time was a Marxist, a proto-Marxist as well. So
that's it, man. Listen, I appreciate you again, bro. I mean, taking the time again to walk through you know, this information, to clip videos, and there were a number of other things that you know, of course, we didn't show, other you know, other videos, this, that, and the other. But again, you know, we did what we set out to do, and that is to show to the contrary, King wasn't a Marxist. He disavowed Marxism. If somebody wants to, if they want any, for instance, primary evidence for that, King's words, Martin Luther King Jr., 1964, Strength to Love essay. How should a Christian view communism? Pages 93 to 100. There's that. And Stanford literally has an entire repository of King papers. It actually can confirm the exact quotes. And Martin Luther King, 1962. This is another sermon transcript. You can find it at the Stanford King Institute. It's from September 30th, 1962. That's what Isaiah was quoting. Can a Christian be a communist? You have that. Then August 9th, 1953. Here is essentially 9 years earlier. 9 years earlier to that sermon. There is another sermon, Communism's Challenge to Christianity. Martin Luther King Jr. again is disavowing communism as incompatible with Christianity. And also August 16th, 1967. Where do we go from here? The SCLC address. You can find that also on the Stanford King Institute. You'll find as primary sources themselves all of King's words about Marxism, communism. There are many critiques where he points out Marx's the weaknesses in Marxism, so forth and so on. I mean, the evidence is
Yeah.
again overwhelming. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah. Also, don't forget, guys, King's Grenada campaign, the clip that I paid where he was advocating to open a black supermarket, a private business, where he was advocating to build private homes. Also, to Sammy, I wasn't saying that J.H. Jackson was committed to the lost cause, but Chad O. Jackson. So Chad O. Jackson is in fact a Confederate apologist. We played that clip earlier. So not Joseph H. Jackson, not J.H. Jackson. Chad O. Jackson is a Confederate apologist. But yeah, remember King's campaign in Grenada. We played the clip here. King's own words. He's advocating for private businesses, private home ownership, and he's grounding all of that activism in the Imago Dei and the holiness of God.
Yeah, there we go. That's good. And for the FBI, the harassment letter, Beverly Gage, November 11th, 2014. What an uncensored letter to MLK reveals. That is the source. And she quotes this letter, right? And as to, and again, remember when King got it, it was in 64, right? And so that is critical because that is one of the earliest data points that we have for when that those allegations and those lies start. An anonymous letter that also threatens King and tells him that, well, you know what to do. Best thing you can do is, essentially kill yourself. Well, that's what they're essentially alluding to, right? So that's important to get. And again, we quoted from Ralph Abernathy's "And the Walls Come Tumbling Down." Georgia Power's 1995 book, I Shared the Dream, which she doesn't really make an affair claim. And King's contemporaries who spoke of Georgia Powers said they didn't know of any particular relationship that Georgia Powers actually had with King. So not only does she not say she had an affair with King, all of the people who knew Georgia Powers, worked with her, and knew of her work with the SCLC all also deny that Georgia Powers did not have any relationship with King. And then there is, I remember Abuja, there's Nantanbu versus Abernathy. That's a federal court opinion summarizing a dispute context where she actually gives this statement about Abernathy under oath. Right. So yes, Abernathy was lying. And his own testimony cancels out the FBI's claim and his own claim. And I should say the FBI's claim is canceled out by his. And then again, there's The Troubling Legacy of Martin Luther King. That is by David Garrow, where we said he was the one who, and that's that source, he was the one who said the FBI's constant paramour was Dorothy Cotton. He makes this speculation that's completely unfounded, non-evidential, and yet Dorothy Cotton doesn't even agree with that, right? So Isaiah spoke about her own words, and she denies that any of these things were true. So again, where is the evidence? Repeating that it's true, repeating claims, none of that is evidence. End of the day, we shut the whole thing down. Now, here's what I'm going to say. If I find you on my page repeating it, I'm not only unfriending you, I'm blocking you. I don't even want to see your face again. I don't want to hear anything from you. I just can't stand dishonest folk. I can't stand people who are hell-bent around evil causes, and facts and evidence just can't convince them. And to be clear, we are not having a disagreement. You are disagreeing with the facts, right? All this stuff about, man, all y'all need to just get together and just talk it out. We don't need to. You have already heard from them. Like Isaiah said, Man, you need to get Chad on here. Listen, if Chad would get on here, he'd get dusted. But guess what? He was on here. We're hearing his words, and we are engaging with his words. Chad is false. He is not a historian. He is not some credible documentarian. He does not know what he's talking about. Chad is regurgitating all of the same lies and talking points that were used in the 60s against King. All of those things were repudiated even in King's day. And he's just revived them along with others who, and they're all from the same camp. All of them are your Christian nationalists. Black folks are the problem. White men are being discriminated against, and they're all from that same ilk. All from the Charlie Kirk is he's a patriot. All from that same camp. Can't make this up, y'all.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts indeed.
There we go.
Listen, you mind if I, before we go, you mind if I plug some stuff?
Go ahead, man.
Listen, y'all, if you're not subscribed to Damon's channel, you need to subscribe to Damon's channel. Also consider becoming a member. You need to do that now. Also, if you're not subscribed to my channel, Black Church Empowered, I host a show entitled Black Church Chats every Tuesday in the month of February at 6:30 p.m. I'm doing Black Church History lectures every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'll be going live and I'll be lecturing on Black Church history. And so if that's something that you're interested in, then lock in, subscribe to Damon's channel, subscribe to my channel, and then starting Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, every Tuesday, I'll be going live and talking about Black Church history.
Absolutely. So definitely Black Church Empowered. Subscribe to his Black Church Chats podcast. And then also every Tuesday, Text Talk with Uncle Wade, the podcast that I am doing with Alexander Wade. We drop a new episode every Tuesday. You can find it on. Listen, please go over there. Do your brother a huge favor. Go over to Apple, go over to Spotify, and then on YouTube and subscribe. It is the best biblical podcast. That's all we talk about is the text, and we find the most interesting topics around text. That it's the hottest biblical podcast out. I'm telling you, go and subscribe there. Follow us on the socials as well. Text Talk Unc Wade. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. It's Text Talk Unc Wade on the socials. But if you go to YouTube, it's Text Talk with Unc and Wade. You'll find us under that name. Also on Patreon. Consider becoming a subscriber there. I promise you, this is the best podcast on the Bible that is currently out. And so again, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate your patience, engaging with us. And until the next time, this has been another edition of Urban Logia Live, and we will see you again. I might even be back tomorrow. Who knows? God bless you in Jesus' name. But I think that we need to be equipped to the point that we are at least what Peter said. He said, be ready to give an answer. Not get ready, but be ready.